I would like to call this July 26th meeting of the City Council to order, and we'll start with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry, I forgot to hit the gavel back there for TV. Dolores, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong? Here. Rodriguez? Present. Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Carnegie?
Yes, thank you. Before we get into tonight's business, I hope you will all join me in a moment of silence for Willits Council member Victor Hansen. Victor passed away last night. He was a longtime fixture in our community. I served on the council from June 7th, 1988 to June 25th, 92, and again more recently from 2008 to 2012. He was a dear and close personal friend to me. I think beyond anyone, he was responsible for me running for city council. I will deeply miss him, and I just would like you all to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. For anybody who likes to imbibe, Victor loved a little something something. If you drink a beer in his honor, I know he would appreciate it. All right, we will move on to public communications. The City Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone has an opportunity to address the council. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same matter, the mayor may request the group appoint a spokesperson. This item is listed to matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council, which are not on this evening's posted agenda. Public criticism of the council, its commission, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. The City Council can take no action on non-agendized items. Would anyone here like to speak to a non-agendized item? Yes. Please come to the podium and state your name for the record. You don't have to adjust the microphone. It's there to pick you up for the TV.
Okay. It's hard to hear you. I'm sorry. My name is Cheryl Abney, and I received a notice that the city is going to increase water and sewer rates.
So,
I don't know how much because the...
Cheryl, I'm just going to interrupt you. This is actually an agendized item, and we will be discussing it tonight, and you will have an opportunity to speak to this.
Okay, so maybe later, not now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think we are going to bump that earlier in the agenda. If you notice, it's at the end, but I think there are people here tonight who want to speak to that, so we'll make sure that you're heard.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thank you. Anyone else for a non-agendized item? Yes, and please come to the podium.
Mark Walker, been a resident all my life here, and my concern is the railroad crossing at East San Francisco Street. Gentleman I met, maybe a year and a half ago, Willie, he's in a wheelchair and has a hard time. In the beginning, before the city came out and put a little pavement down, his chair used to rock pretty hard. And I was just waiting for him to go over and have to assist him because he can't help himself back into a chair. So I'm concerned about that area of our community because we just had a big event where we had to get our stores in compliant, right? So we should be worried about our crossings too. Now, I don't know who's responsible for that. The railroad crossing is railroad, or the city has to make sure that traffic can proceed across. And my assumption is if the line's not being used, like out there at the north end of town, pull it up and pave it over. Make it safer for him to cross. He goes to Safeway quite often. So that's my concern, be here for him today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll definitely address it with the city manager and our facilities and services department head. Thank you. Any other public comments on non-agendized items tonight? Going once? Okay, we're going to move on to public matters. The first is an update from the Little Lake Fire Department Protection District. We do not have an in-person update, but instead there is an update in our packet. Anyone who would like to hear the updates from our firefighters is welcome to look at the packet on the city's website. We also have tonight a quarterly update from the Willits Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, everyone. Mayor Connie, council members. I see it's a busy agenda tonight, so I'll be very brief in our last quarter, which is April through June. April saw our first chamber mixer in a couple of years. This mixer was sponsored by Rotary Club. It was lightly attended, but it was a good start. Our second mixer was in May, sponsored by the Lions Club at the Scout Hut, and had a much better turnout, including representation from the fire district, to be thanked for their efforts in renovating the Scout Hut. Memorial Day weekend was the Chamber's 41st annual car and bike show. We had a good turnout with a combined total of about 120 cars and bikes. Everyone had a great time right up to the 3 o'clock time when we had a good old-fashioned thunderstorm come along. June brought planning for the series of 3 art walks, as well as a participation in Frontier Days and Hometown Celebration to promote buying locally and supporting our town. During these months, the website has been updated. We are now able to accept event postings to promote other organizations. The final step in updating the website is to list members by categories with hyperlinks to represent them to the public. I've participated in a number of committees, including the Walkable Willits signage group that's represented by Blue Zones, Rotary, Spare Time, the County Museum, the Willits Art Center, and the Chamber. The group has developed a digital sign of Willits. The project is now at a point where we need to hire a graphic designer. And of the bids we've received, we have selected Brigadoon. The map will be inclusive of all of Willits, will be printed on a large scale, as well as a smaller version that can be integrated into pedestrian areas and kiosks. The signage is shareable for all to use as a marketing tool. The Chamber is now looking forward to Harvest Moon celebration, which is September 30th from 2 to 7 on Main Street, and we're closing Main Street as we did for Hometown Celebration for that. So far, it's been a busy summer with lots of visitor inquiries, especially on stunt train days, and plans for future events still to come this year. And that's our update for the last 3 months through June. Any questions, suggestions?
Anyone from the council have questions for Susan? Comments?
Just comment, that sounds really great. Really glad to see that, and glad that your now website is now accepting event postings, because that's been a need in the community.
Well, it felt like it was a very busy time to be consolidated on just a couple pages, so it seems like there was a lot more going on than what ended up here, but yeah.
Sounds great.
Going along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan.
I'd just like to say you've definitely made a difference over
thank
at
you.
the Chamber. It's nice to be able to walk over there and find it. It's always been occupied now. When I go over there, there's somebody there. You're friendly. Just when I see you out and about in the community, easy to talk to. And I love seeing that the Chamber's getting more involved in more events.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to do.
So, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we will move on to the enactment of ordinances. We have none this evening, so that brings us to our consent calendar. The following items are presented to the City Council tonight for approval or denial. City Council minutes, we have minutes from the special meeting on June 21st regarding our land use element of the general plan. And then we also have regular council minutes from June 28th. Larry.
On the Wednesday, the 28th of 2000, it said that on the thing that Larry Stransky and Rodriguez abstained. We did not abstain, we said no.
Yes, thank you. I made that correction as well.
Okay, thank you.
There was also one on the previous motion regarding the East Commercial Street corridor. You were listed as abstaining. Again, that was a no vote.
Yes.
And so I have had that recorded as well. I did ask for it to be noted in the special meeting minutes that Councilwoman Strong attended but left early. That was not recorded in the meeting minutes. Are there any other comments about minutes from the council?
I made a couple of just typographic kind of things.
Great, thank you.
I already gave those to Dolores.
Okay. Any members of the public have comments about the minutes from either the special meeting or the last council meeting? No? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Can I ask on the second item there, do we specify who those designees are?
Oh, yes, I suppose we should take care of that. I was just wanting to take care of the minutes, but let's take care of the minutes first, and then we can do the designee, okay?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Dolores, may we have a roll call?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Do I need to speak up? Yes?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
We're all old and deaf.
All right. Okay, the next item on the consent calendar is to designate council members as the League of California Cities 2023 Annual Conference voting delegate and up to 2 alternates. We'll have Dolores present.
Apparently there was a disagreement at last year's annual conference. Usually we do this by the resolution that you guys passed in, I believe it was March. They are now requiring this due to the disagreement that happened at last year's annual conference to designate a voter at the conference, as opposed to every other meeting where the resolution will go into effect.
Okay.
So who's attending the conference this year?
Jerry is our representative for... Do we need to appoint then a delegate or an alternate?
It gives you the option to appoint 2 alternates, but you only need to do 1.
Okay.
But may I interrupt?
Yes.
Jerry sits on that and Larry's the alternate, so I believe it would be those same 2.
Okay. And are you still willing to be the alternate? Sure. Okay. Would anybody like to be a second alternate? Anyone interested?
If we have to be president, we're not going to be president, it seems pointless.
Okay. All right. So we need to pass a resolution renaming these 2 as our delegate and alternate?
I so move.
Great.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Anybody from the public have a comment about the delegation of Vice Mayor Gonzalez as our delegate and Councilman Stransky as our alternate? Any comments? Nope. Okay, back to the dais. We have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes, thank you. And for any members of the public who don't know, the League of California Cities is a statewide organization that is focused on helping municipalities retain local control. There's advocacy at the state level to make sure that our voices are heard when state policies are going before the legislature. So we have a representative and an alternate to make sure that Willits concerns are taken to the League of California Cities. All right, monthly activity reports do not require action by the council but are of public interest, none in tonight's packet. We have no meetings for the commissions, agencies, and authorities. Instead of going now to our city manager reports and recommendations, I'd like to move us to item 9D, which is the noticed public hearing regarding the proposed water and wastewater rate increase. We'll hear first a presentation from Eric Hegelson of Bartle Wells Associates, and then we'll have discussion and possible action, which is when the public will have an opportunity to weigh in on this critical piece of decision-making. So first we'll hear a presentation on why this proposal is being made.
All right, good evening. And
Yeah.
can you hear me? All right, perfect. Good evening, my name is Eric Helgeson. I'm with Bartle Wells Associates, and we're an independent finance consulting firm that the city hired to review the finances of the water and wastewater utilities and recommend what the rates should be for the next 5 years. The city's gone out with a 218 notice, which is notifying the ratepayers of what the maximum rates will be. And if fewer than the majority of ratepayers submit protests, then the council will have the option to go forward with those protests, and with those rates.
Can everyone hear him? We good? Okay.
And, oh, sorry, there we go. So I'm going to briefly go over the background of the study and talk about the results and open it up for questions. The process of the study consists of determining a 10-year financial plan for each utility And in that financial plan, we identify the amount of rate revenue that will need to be generated from the customers to continue funding the utilities level of service and make any improvements that are deemed necessary. After that, we allocate that rate revenue based on how different customers use the system and the cost that those uses demand, so that the rates are equitable and meet the requirements of Proposition 218. Also, just want to note that the study takes a lot of data, and we really appreciate all the effort from city staff to gather that data to us and deliver it to us and answer the questions that we had as we went through the process. The objective of the study was to make sure that the rates that the enterprises are financially sufficient, and the key part of that is making sure that the rates are bringing the revenue necessary, as I mentioned, to meet operating costs and capital needs. The enterprises are almost entirely funded off of user fees and rates, and so it's important that those are at the level adequate to continue providing that level of service. Also, the rates need to be legally compliant, and I'll get into that a little more later, but there are some laws in California that put stricter requirements on how those rates can be levied. We also want to align the rates with the city objectives to support, encourage conservation, and also have the rate revenues be as stable and predictable as possible, and also maintain a focus on making sure that predictable part of it was also the maintaining a customer focus to ensure that the rates are predictable, and that the changes are minimal from one rate study to the next. Prop 218 has a few requirements. Substantive requirements include that the rates must be proportional to the benefit provided, and that the rates cannot exceed the cost of providing service. There are also procedural requirements, which I described at the beginning, which dictate how the Prop 218 notification process goes. So the water enterprise serves 6,000 people. It provides service to a service area that's over 30 square miles. There are 2 treatment plants, 5 pump stations, and so there's a significant amount of infrastructure that the city has to maintain. One main driver for the study is to not only maintain the current level of service, but also improve it. And so a number of capital projects have been identified. Some of those projects are to improve water quality, such as increasing the amount of flushing and eliminating the old steel pipes and replacing those with PVC pipes, or the plastic pipes, which won't rust and will maintain a higher level of water quality. Also improving the water supply by bringing in the infrastructure, or by finishing the infrastructure to have groundwater be a secondary source. Also improving storage capabilities and meeting fire flow requirements by increasing the treated water storage capacity. So all of those projects, and some others that I didn't go into detail on, are going to be over $6.8 million for the next 5-year period. So that all has to be funded by the rate revenue. After that, we've targeted an amount in today's dollars of $500,000 per year, and that grows. We design that to grow with inflation, and that's the amount that we're targeting for rates to be able to cash fund by the end of this 5-year period. This chart just shows the capital spending that is planned over the 5-year period, and I mean over the 10-year period, and you can see over the 5-year period is when you have a lot more capital spending that's planned. So the rates have to support this improvement to the level of service. In addition to the capital costs, there's also inflation. Rates haven't increased since 2019, and costs have increased 19%. We included an assumption that costs will continue to increase at about 5%. we want to make sure that the rates are sufficient to provide, to continue to allow the enterprise to maintain its infrastructure and pay its expenses. Another point for inflation is the rising cost of electricity. PG&E costs have increased substantially and are projected to continue to increase, and we'll touch on that in the wastewater portion as well. And then the final thing, we also wanted to ensure that the city maintained a prudent reserve level, and as the capital expenses were incurred. So over the next 5-year period, for the water enterprise, we're projecting that the city will use a mix of debt and cash funding to accomplish all the projects that have been identified. And so what this chart shows is the level of expenses. So each column represents the total expenses that the city will have to pay from rates, and then the green line shows the revenue, and the dotted black line shows the reserves. So in the next 5 years, the city will first use reserves, and then use a little bit of debt financing to finish funding all of those projects. And we've identified that with 6.5% increases to the rate revenue, the city will be able to maintain its reserve level and fund those projects. So you can see the green line stays with the costs as they continue to go on over the 5-year period. One thing to note is that when we did the cost of service analysis, some costs changed at a different rate at a different percentage than the overall revenue increase. So, and I'll touch on that when we go into the rates, but the lower water tier is slightly less than a 6.5% increase, and the higher water tier is more than the 6.5% increase, and that just reflects the current cost of providing service. Over the 10-year period, the rate increases are projected to continue to be sufficient to fund the expenses and also maintain the reserve level. These are the recommended rates. You can see that there's that the overall increase was going up by 6.5%. However, the rates are going up by slightly different amounts. The tier 1 is a little bit less, tier 2 is more, and the fixed rates are going up by about 6%. The impact to a residential water bill for the lower users, it's at 4 units or 400 cubic feet. The bill would go from $50.54 to $53.60. So it's about 6%. On the higher end, a 10-unit bill would go from $97.86 to $106.70. That's about 9%.
Is that over just 1 year or 5?
That's a monthly usage.
Okay.
Yes.
But that increases that in year 1 or by the end of year 5?
This is the first year, so this is about the first 6.5, and just also to note, inflation is about 5%. So to make those improvements, we're looking for about 1.5% above inflation. We also did a survey of how the rates compare to neighboring agencies. Every agency is unique, so you can't take a lot away from it, but what it does indicate is that your rates are staying in the same general range that they were, and that your range is in the middle of the region, which indicates that you're maintaining your system and that you're doing preventative maintenance, but it's just shows that the rates are reasonable, but you can't read much into the survey beyond that. On the sewer enterprise, again, the objective is to maintain the infrastructure and continue to provide a high quality level of service. The sewer enterprise serves a few more people, about 8,000 people, and there are 22 miles of sewer line. So again, the sewer enterprise also has a significant amount of infrastructure that it needs to maintain and replace when it reaches the end of its useful life. The 5-year projected capital spending up for the sewer utility is $5.7 million. Again, some of this will be a mix of debt and cash financing, but also the city proactively tries to receive grant funds as well. So one of the projects identified was a solar project, and part of the reason it's included is because there is a significant amount of grant funding available, and the city is trying to pursue that. Also, rising PG&E costs. Over the past, I believe it was 3 years, the city's costs have risen about $150,000 a year. And so the city's looking to freeze electricity costs and by having solar, a project to have solar energy instead of continuing to have to pay the rising PG&E costs.
So you're suggesting that for the city to invest in the solar plan at the wastewater treatment plant, we'd effectively be putting a cap on how much our PG&E rates are increasing over there. So taxpayers will feel the hurt of the rate increase, but they ultimately will be saving taxpayer money by a reduction in energy use there.
Correct, we looked at 2 options. One was, I believe it was 6.5%. The other was 7% increases, and we're recommending, based on feedback from the city, to have the recommended rates be the 7% increases, which will give the city a little bit more revenue and to be able to fund that project within the 3-year window that they would need to, based on the permitting and some other things identified.
2 questions. One is, what is the anticipation of grant funding for some of that, especially the solarizing project?
I'll have to look at it.
Does your rate study count on it?
We included it for the solar project because those funds are more certain, and the project is in a preliminary phase. That was I believe was a quote that the city received, included some grant funds. I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head. I apologize. I want to say it was something like 25%, but I can look that up. But this was a preliminary phase, but we wanted to make sure that we took the quote into consideration because there's a 3-year window after the city applies for the. I apologize. This is outside of my financial area of expertise, but I know the city applied for a permit to do the solar projects, and once you apply for the permit, there's a 3-year window that begins.
So the expense of putting in a solar system does assume a certain amount of grant funding, or?
We did include a certain amount of grant funding, and I believe it was 25%, but I'll have to double check and get back to you.
And the other thing about that, does it also factor in the fact that we might save up to $260,000 a year on our PG&E bills, or some relatively significant amount of money we could save?
Yes, we also did factor in the cost savings, and we factored in the net of the maintenance costs.
Great.
That's probably a technical question for Manny, but that cost savings would go back into which account?
It would go back into the sewer account. Those savings, there are savings of their expenses, and so that would stay within the sewer.
And also be reflected with lower recommended rate increases than you'd otherwise need in the future. And so that's what that big spike is in the 3rd year. That's the rough projection of the solar project costs. And as I mentioned, inflation is also affecting the sewer enterprise just as significantly as the water enterprise. So we did include a 5% projected inflation over the next 5 years, where inflation has been somewhat unpredictable. It's dipped slightly below 5, but we want to make sure, I think the core inflation rate in June was 4.8%, but we want to have a slightly conservative projection to ensure that the rates are sufficient to meet the needs of the utility. So again, this shows this figure shows the financial plan of the sewer enterprise over the next 5 years. Again, the columns are the total cash expenses of the enterprise, and the green line is the revenue. The sewer enterprise had slightly higher reserves accumulated. I believe there were some projects that were delayed during COVID. And so the financial plan is first drawing down those reserves down back to the target level, and then utilizing debt to fund the additional amount above and then at the end of the 5-year period, be at the point I mentioned where the rates are cash funding an average maintenance amount at the end of the 5-year period. And we always recommend that you use debt to kind of fund the spikes, but make sure you have rates sufficient to cash fund the ongoing maintenance projects for the enterprise. And as I mentioned, with the solar project incorporated in the projections, we were recommending the rates be slightly front-loaded, so 7% overall rate revenue increases in the beginning, and then 6% in the final 2 years. The 10-year projection, same thing as I mentioned with the water, the revenues will keep pace with costs, and you'll maintain a reserve which is about 1 year of operating costs is what we target.
This says water financial plan, but you mean wastewater?
Thank you for the correction. Yes, that's wastewater. I apologize. Yes, this is wastewater. So the wastewater rates, there was we did a cost of service analysis. So in the first year, some of the rates were changed at a different pace than the 7% overall rate revenue increase. The total revenue recovered will be 7% greater, is projected to be 7% greater than the revenue currently is, but some of the rates are going to be slightly higher, some will be slightly lower. I believe the residential rate is going to be slightly under the 7% for the next year, and some of the commercial rates will be slightly higher. The sewer rate, we also did a survey of regional sewer rates. You're still in the middle, on the slightly above average side once the rates go into effect. I think it indicates that your rates are, you're doing a good job of maintaining your system and keeping up with costs. But this change doesn't drastically change where you fall within the other providers in the region. And the combined increase will move you from $137.13 for an average bill to $145.98. Still staying in the middle, but moving over some Santa Rosa and Ukiah, although I believe Santa Rosa, I recall, is also doing a rate study, if I remember correctly.
Just a question.
Yeah, quick question. The previous slide where you had Brook Trails Community Service District, they pay the city for the sewage, for the use of the sewage treatment plant, and so they would have a proposed increase. If we approve this, that would also be shared with their rates. So that particular one there, the Brook Trails, would actually go up commensurate.
I'm sure there's some lag, yeah, so they'd have to do their own notice, and yes, but that's a great point, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I'm sure their costs will also increase, and they'll have to go through the same 218 notification process as we're going through today. So overall, the city's provided good financial stewardship. The maintained rates have kept pace with costs. And, we always recommend keeping rates moving with inflation so that you don't face a large rate increase that's harder to manage down the road. When you're in a pinch, being able to have the funds to do proactive maintenance is always less expensive than waiting for emergencies and having to do patch larger holes down the road, essentially. The rates were updated to reflect the cost of service for each customer class and tier, doing our best to keep it in compliance with Prop 218. And the rates are designed to support each utility's operating costs, debt service, and capital needs.
Can I make so I think for many of our residents, 7% feels like a large increase, but what you're suggesting is that by not keeping pace with inflation and not proposing a rate increase like this, we could at some point get into a pickle where we suddenly have to ask for a 12% or higher increase, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
And we face that in many other agencies that delay.
They kick the can down the road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So on that same subject, you said that we have not increased our rates since 2019, partly because of the COVID impact on everybody. So we weren't keeping up with inflation for those 3 years or 4 years.
Correct, and I believe the city did it intentionally. As some of on the wastewater side, some of the reserves accumulated because the capital projects weren't being undertaken at the pace that was projected before COVID. Supplier shortages and other things made it more difficult, and staffing issues. But yes, I think the city. I recognize that after a couple of years of it could have the finances to handle a couple of years of delay, but then brought us in when it was recognized that rates needed to start keeping pace with inflation again.
Sabrina?
Yeah, so over a 5-year period, will we see a 35% increase from year 1 to year 5?
I'll calculate close. It'll be a little different with the compounding, but it'll be. I can give you the exact.
It'll probably be a variable. And then I'm curious, for example, in the last rate study period, that 5-year period, what was the inflation rate? Because we talk about a 7% inflation rate, but I know that inflation is high right now because of what's going on with the economy. And I'm just wondering if we see a point where inflation is coming down, but yet we've already approved for rates to be high. I'm just wondering historically, in comparison, over a 5-year period, how much of inflation rates gone? Have we seen historically inflation rates go up 35% over a 5-year period?
That's a great question. Not recently. My job used to be a lot easier 4 years ago when we would always assume, inflation stayed below 3%, between 2 and 3% for 30 years or something, or 20 years. It was a very predictable inflation level, and inflation did, and I will say it was going up 3% a year, so 3% over 5 years. It was still, substantial increase over that 5-year period. But now, the past 3 years, we saw inflation around 7-8%. It's down to around 5%. We're using 5% in the study because we want to be conservative, but we don't want to be overly conservative. So that's why we felt 5% was a prudent amount to project.
I'm just thinking about how economists are talking about we can't keep going at this level that we're going, and so I want to be mindful of that when we're doing our own projections. And so I'm thinking it's not, and inflation isn't necessarily the driving factor, it's a component of it, but isn't it really the fact that we want to make infrastructure improvements, specifically the sewer solar, that's at the heart of the rate increase?
Absolutely, that's the being able to finance the project and meet your debt service coverage requirements for financing it was a large driver of the solar being brought into that. On the water side, you are making a lot of improvements to the system as well. With the, with the rate increases, it's kind of steering the ship slightly in a slightly different angle. The rates are going to, inflation costs continue to rise, and we're trying to just keep pace with that and recognition of what the needs are. Also, the rates that are in the 218 notice are the maximum rates the city can adopt, so we want to make sure that the city isn't in a bind in 3 years. If say inflation is a little bit less than we projected, and in 3 years you could get to a point where you may be able to, one option is have less debt financing, which will keep rates lower over the long term. You can use more cash and less debt. Another option is, the rates could be a little bit lower than the maximum noticed amount. We always recommend, take a look, in 3 years or so and see how you're doing, because a lot can change over the course of 3 years.
Just as we suspended in year 4 and 5 our rate increases, even though we have the ability to increase the rate, we have that option with this. Okay.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Additionally, what I wanted to state also with this is that we're attempting to replace mains associated with the water and the sewer lines. The Coast Street, Highway 20, Pine Street, Laurel, and Oak Street mains are all slated to be replaced for the wastewater infrastructure, along with water infrastructure mains as well, to replace it with pipe, to clean up the water and to help out with everything. So the idea behind this is to strengthen up our infrastructure in order to be able to make sure things run smoothly later on.
I think you make a good point, because it isn't just the sewer solar project, but it's the replacement of the sewer lines in the city streets as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larry, did you have a question?
Yes. When I first got on the council in the early 2000s, we decided for a 5-year period, we wouldn't raise the water rates. And the next 5 years, I didn't think that we were ever going to make it. And it was a pretty steady flow and we were doing 12% on this for 10 years to get out of it. And you really don't understand how big a bite that takes in only over a 5-year period. And we thought that we were, that the city was just pulling the wool over our eyes, but believe me, they weren't pulling the wool over our eyes. We paid for it. The city paid for it. And I didn't think we were ever going to get out of that. And so I definitely goes with the little bit of rise, and especially if the solar comes on, that's really going to make a good thing for us. And at those days, we were replacing big chunks of the steel pipe. And that's, it's just, we've made a whole lot of good things go better by having the money.
I absolutely agree. It's, a stitch in time saves 9, or whatever the saying is.
I think that's the saying.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on your presentation? Or?
That's everything.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so at this point, we will now move to item E, which is discussion and possible action to accept the water and wastewater rate study report and adopt a resolution to direct staff to proceed with adjustments to the water and wastewater service charges. Manny, did you have a presentation to make as well, or are you? Okay. So at this point, I would like to open it up to the public. You've all heard the reason for the rate study and why the proposal has been made. I know you've got opinions. Cheryl, you're first, so I'd ask you to come up here. Once again,
I just have one question.
Okay, could you do it here so that camera can pick it up? Thank you. Sorry to be a stickler about that, but otherwise they can't hear it out in TV land.
No, I just have one question. I see all your figures, and I'm not a mathematician. How much a month is it going to cost each household when this is passed? $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month? That's my only question.
It's totally dependent on your usage. There was a slide, I don't know if Eric, you're able to...
Water or sewer?
Oh, are you talking about water or sewer?
I'm talking about water.
Water, okay. Are you able to go back to the slide that showed the average?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we know at year 1 and year 5?
Yes.
like if you pay $30 a month for water, how much more would it be? Okay.
Currently, if you're using pure oil, you're paying at $31.70.
Okay.
It's going to go up 35 cents.
So we're only going to be paying like a few cents
Wait,
more a month?
hold on, we can't have crosstalk because the
I'm just
TV
saying.
can't pick it up. So when you have a comment, I'll have you come up here and make it just so that everyone can hear. Eric, if you could, you had an answer to that?
Oh, sorry, yes, so, move by the camera, or the microphone. Yeah, so at a lower bill, it'd go, a lower usage level would go up about a little over $3, and at a higher usage level, it'd go up roughly 8 to 9, and more, slightly more as you use more water. This is just showing a snapshot.
Okay, so my question is, I'm done with math. If my water bill is $30 a month, how much more would it go up if I don't use any more water?
Under, I believe,
About $5 a month more?
less than that.
Less than that.
Okay.
Probably closer to $2.50, something like that.
Thank you, sir. That's all I wanted to know. That was my main question. Thank you,
Basically
guys.
less than 10%. So if you're paying $30 a month, the 10% would add another $3. You're looking at maybe $2.
Well, I don't see how anyone can complain about that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? For the graph here, you have 4 CCF. Can ratepayers who use less than 4, do they get a lower bill? Or is that the base rate here for the city of Willits?
So the base rate is $25.42, so if you use no water, it'd be $25.42, and then that'll go up to $27.08. So that would be the lowest change would be, and then for every additional unit of water you use.
Is that the 628?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So
I understand.
I just wanted to clarify too for the public, just keep in mind that the rates are lower, the proposed increase is lower for lower water users. So if you're using between 0 and 6 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet, you're looking at $6.28 per unit, jumping to $6.63, 40 cents. But if you're a big user, you got a big garden, you're growing everything this summer, you're going to pay more because it's more expensive to produce those higher units of water. So again, how much your rate goes up is totally based on your usage. The less you use, the less increase you're going to see.
Thank you.
Match.
And also, it is a little complicated because the total bill that you get is a combination of the base rate, which everybody has to pay even if they use no water, because they're hooked up to the system, and then the amount you use. So the rate study takes that into account, but these are just kind of an amalgamation of those two factors, the base rate plus the usage.
Who else would like to make a comment or? Yes, come to the podium, please.
So what she was referring to is the biggest increase would be your base rate. Because right now you pay $25.42 at the very bottom.
He can't pick you up if you're talking while you're walking.
Start over again.
Okay, well, so we're looking at our base rate. That's right now currently $25.42, right? So it's going to go up to $27.08. That's your biggest raise. Then your unit service, go ahead from there. How much water you want to use, what you're going to pay for.
And sewer's about 74 a month if you divide it.
Sewer. Okay. So what my major concern is I hear a lot of infrastructure, new piping, new plants, and I thought we just put a bunch of millions of dollars into our sewer plant now 5 years ago. Got it updated, got a bunch of change orders in, and the price went through the roof. So my understanding was the original bid was shut out of the water by change orders. It went through the roof. So who managed that? Who actually went after that contractor and went back 3 jobs and checked with each individual job to see if they did a good job or were they lousy? Because the reports I was getting when I was working for Redwood Children's Service from a gentleman, Tony Tucker, that lived in Covelo. He was part of the board up there and involved, and he said they were very dissatisfied with the company and had filed suit against them. So I was kind of wondering, well, how did we get roped into that one? Now, it's not, however it works out, but I'd like to see that investigated. And in the future, pass an ordinance saying, look, we want competent people for what they bid, and go ahead and give them 15% over for as industry, price increases and all that. We have to allow for that. but in the end, make them accountable. So whoever decides who we're going to have do this work, does their research, goes back 3 jobs, and checks their job performance and know how it goes. We're a business, a city. We got to make sure we have accountability and transparency, right? Okay, well, that's where I'm standing. That's what I come down here to say. Thank you now.
Thank you, Mark.
And just to kind of also comment on, a person somewhere in the audience said that it was going to be about $70 per month on the sewer rate, and it's actually more like $5. The difference is that the increase is $61 for the annual fee, and divide that by 12, and it's $5 per month.
So you're saying that the increase in sewer is $61 per year,
$61 per year.
which
from
prorated out
$9.49.
over each month is about
No,
$5
yeah, the
increase.
current rate's 74 for water, no, 99 for water and sewer combined, and it'll go up now to about 140 per month at the base rate for the both, at the 5-year mark at least. So we'll pay about 480 more a year at the base rate for both sewer and water at the 5-year mark.
The connection fee, the residential minimum is $88.40, and it'll raise to $949.46 for the entire year.
Yeah, but I think on your 5,
Amanda.
1,200.
I'm going to need you to come up
That's-
here to make your statements. He can't pick you up from the
That's
audience.
fine, that's fine, thank you.
Who else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Me?
Yes, thank you.
So my question is
If you could
this.
state your name for that.
Mona Ganator. And I've noticed I have a watering bowl for my cats, which is white. And for the last month or so, couple months, when I go to clean it, and I clean it fairly regularly, there is a nasty yellow slimy film at the bottom. And my question is this, I came late, but my friend told me that you were going to replace pipes. But my question is, until they get replaced, is this water actually safe? Because it really doesn't look like it and it really doesn't smell like it. But it's not like I can afford to be giving my cats bottled water every day either. So that's just my question is it actually safe? Because if I can smell the water, I can't drink it, and I actually feel bad giving it to my cats. And my fish, I've had some fish die, both at my home and both out at the senior center where I work. When we do our water change, which you take the water halfway down, you clean it, and you refill. And we've been having fish die, and I've had fish die at home, and my cats are having more health problems, which are kidney related. And so I really would like to know if this is safe, because if it's not, I most certainly will bend over backwards to find a way to give them bottled water. So that's just my question. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Who can answer that?
Well, I just want to ask Scott. Scott, if you took a bottled water and you poured it in a dish and you left it out where it's exposed to the elements, can bacteria get in there? What kinds of things can cause stagnant water that's exposed to the air to change color or?
This is recent, though. It's recent.
Yes.
And the water flows. It's a flowing, constantly flowing. It's not stagnant, and it gets changed frequently.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. This, on June 22nd, I think everyone's aware, we had 2 major water leaks in town that actually stirred up the whole system. I've never experienced that, but we're still seeing the residual effects from it. Those 2 big leaks also contributed to 10 smaller leaks throughout town. So basically, when you get discolored water, it's a change of velocity. So it's like a mud puddle that sits clear until you step in it. It's not going to change color, right? So if it's flowing through your pipe and it changes the velocity, it's going to stir up the interface of the walls of the pipe, which is called adsorption. So these minerals stick to the interface of the wall. They don't absorb to it. So it can become, it's called a biofilm on the inside. And that's when we do our annual flushing, we scour the pipes to remove that. So that's the residual of that. You don't get it all, but we get the majority of it.
Okay, but my question was, is it actually safe?
Yes.
Yeah, can you speak to the safety of it and how you know that it's
Yes.
safe?
So we're heavily regulated by the State Water Resource Control Board. We have weekly tests, we have monthly tests, and throughout town, we do bacteriological tests, 2 to 4 a week, and designated sample stations. So we're constantly monitoring. And if we had a violation, the city council would know, and the city would know, or the community would know if it was needed to go that far. Some of them are lower level.
How many years has it been since our last violation?
2014.
Jerry?
Question for Scott. Same thing. I get this is the system that you're talking about, but also individual addresses or areas also could have issues in their own pipes too. When that velocity comes up, it also not only stirs up our water, but also does something to their systems, right? So if I had old iron pipes, or I had the crusties that got stuck in my pipes when the water starts and stops, does that also filter into, so it may not be our water per se, it may pick up?
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's a way to check that. You can go, if you have, so there's a difference between hot and cold water. Sometimes your hot water heater, or a lot of the time, it'll collect sediment over time. And if you run hot water and it's brown, it's most likely coming from your hot water heater, and you can flush that with a hose bib on the bottom. If it's cold and it's brown, what I recommend is to go out to your hose bib before it comes into your house, run it, and see if that's clear. And then you can, a process of elimination of, okay, it's coming from the city or it's coming from my internal pipes.
So if it comes from the hose,
Hose bib coming in, because you know that's our infrastructure.
so it's coming from the city, if
Beyond
it's
that.
coming from the pipes within.
Correct.
I will say I live in a house that's over 100 years old over on North Street, and I used to have a lot of rusty water. We replaced our pipes, and we're not seeing rusty water any longer. I know we had old pipes in our house.
I've got new pipes.
You have new pipes?
Yeah, I have my whole place repiped.
Okay, okay.
Within the last couple of years with pets.
Yeah, yeah, PEX is the, Madge?
Yeah, I have noticed, I think probably from that incident you're talking about it, so about a month and a half ago, that the water tasted differently, and it didn't taste like chlorine, it tasted more almost metallic. Was that a correction that was made because of the leak causing problems? Was the water treatment changed during that period of time?
No. So that taste is probably your natural occurring iron and manganese. It's in naturally occurring in the lakes that we oxidize and filter out at the treatment plant. And we do, it's a secondary standard, so it's not a maximum contaminant level. So it's not a health concern. It's a more aesthetics and discoloration. Don't do your laundry if it's brownish. It'll stain your whites. So that's how the EPA and the state regulate that.
But this was only recently that I've ever noticed that, just in the last...
Yes, and I think we've had a lot of conversations about this. But when you lose system pressure and it's not stagnant and normal, and then you flow 3,500 gallons a minute through those pipes, it's going to take the weaker chunks off, and then they're going to float down the pipe, and then they might dissipate 2 weeks later, and you might get a little shot of it for a day. Because they're nodules, they're carbuncles, we call them, like iron manganese concentration, maybe a little rust from inside the steel pipes. And they'll stay hard until they dissipate. And so you might get sporadic areas throughout town that will get it and some won't.
So I think it's important that we're talking about water quality. Obviously, it's something that we all are aware of every day and are concerned about. But let's make sure that we continue to focus on the issue that's at hand, which is the rate increase, which brings us back to improving our infrastructure and making sure that we can continue to address these water quality and aesthetic issues that we all are aware of. It's still open to the public. Has anyone else have a comment that they would like to make? Mr. Walker, if you would return to the...
Yeah, I would just like to know...
Yeah, thank you. I know, it seems like a pain.
Right, yeah, I'm just used to burning my kids. So my concern right now would be is what time structure do we have to have the complete system revamped from north to south?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously, it's a money thing, so I understand that, and I'm not against paying my share. I want to make sure that's clear. You got to pay your share if you want quality.
Yeah.
So let's get quality built, but let's set an agenda, get a reputable company to come in and do it for us in one big job or whatever it takes, and pay them and do it responsibly, but get it done and solve these kind of problems.
Yeah, so we do have an aggressive capital improvement plan.
Right.
That's part of what has focused this rate increase proposal.
Right.
It's available on the city's website.
Right.
It illuminates all of the projects that are
Right.
laid out for both water
Sure.
and wastewater.
Well, as long as we got a time frame, it's going to be ran right, that's good.
That's the hope. Yes.
So, and then Scott, you chime in if I get this wrong, but we have like a plan as part of this rate increase, things we want to do. It's kind of like saying, I want a new car next year, and all of a sudden, guess what, you call the dealership and they're not shipping cars for another 2 years or so. So there's a little bit of that happens with this. And there's a little bit of what we want and what we can afford all at once. I mean, I think if it's one of those where hypothetically we were in Beverly Hills and you guys said, we'll write the checks today, we probably could do like Mr. Walker says, go hire somebody and get it all done all at once, but the reality is that's probably not going to happen. I think it's going to be one where we what's that phrase about eating an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time, and I think that we tackle areas where we have the worst issues or what we can do, and sometimes I've seen it in my time here at the city and living in town all my life, is that sometimes you want to work on this, but that's not available or that you can't get to it, you go somewhere else and you tackle it there.
And I will say that as far as replacing water main lines, there were several areas around town that were slated for replacement over a period of years, and the council brought the groundwater concern strongly to staff last year, who then agreed to push all of those plans together. So the goal for this year is to work on all of those main lines at once, get those replaced, the oldest steel main lines, get them out of here. So that is the plan, recommended by staff, supported by council. That's what we're moving towards.
There's one other thing too that I just wanted to make mention, is that we're just not only looking at these projects as like a one section or two section. We're talking about doing these. Whenever we rip up a road, we want to be able to take care of both the water main and the sewer main at the same time, so that then when we pave over it, we're not ripping it up again to be able to make another change. And so we're trying to have a little bit of forethought here and be able to make sure that we do this in the most cost-effective way possible.
Right. This council made a decision early on that they didn't want to do pretty projects that were pavement only. They wanted to make sure all of the underground infrastructure was corrected before paving was done. So we were going after the big problems first. It's expensive. Nobody wants to face it. But we made that decision, the five of us, to tackle those things because we knew they were important. And unfortunately, it cost more. You, sir, would you like to come?
I'm Dave Pierce and live on East San Francisco. Relatively new resident of Willits, having arrived here on a cloud of ash and smoke in 2019. And frequent experience of brown water and the smell and going through lots of filters. So, you know, I am heartened to hear that the sewer and water is, there is a plan in place. Is there a place on the city's website where the plan is listed and the projected dates of completion or the goals?
The website has been undergoing a lot of transformation. The budget is on there, and the capital improvement project is part, or the capital improvement plan is part of the budget, so that is accessible. I believe the last thing I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, we are working on more user-friendly tabs so that ratepayers can easily find the information.
Yes, we are significantly overhauling the website, but the current website is still fully functioning. You can access the budget, and the CIP is essentially at the end of the document. So you can navigate to our website, get to the budget page, and you can download it, you can view it. And I encourage you, if you want to come down and talk to myself or any staff member, and we can walk you through what we're looking at in that document.
Okay, it's page 134.
134.
Okay.
So the home that we purchased and moved into is brand spanking new. I mean, it even has, fire sprinklers, it's all up to code. Literally, the backyard fence was being completed while we were in escrow. So there's no question that this brown water that we're experiencing is coming from the supply. And one of the things, this is the first time in my life where I actually feel like I'm a participating citizen in my community. And I'm enjoying this. What was I getting? So contacted Scott, and within about an hour, there was a representative of the city standing in my house. I've never experienced that. So my experience from that is that this is a responsive body. We do have some concerns about, okay, any kind of rate increase, I get it, and so I'm looking forward to improvement. I do, have some skepticism, and I hope that will be put to rest.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Rodriguez, did you have a comment?
Yes, I know this may be hard to answer, but City Manager, I was curious. I know we're addressing the pipes that are most problematic as it relates to brown water, and we know that a portion of this increase is to address that problem. Do we have a sense of how many years it will take of infrastructure improvement to replace all of the city water supply lines? I've been asked this question several times and I don't know the answer.
That's a question, yes. I want to be honest, and staff wanted me to be very clear on this. If the rate increase is implemented and we move forward with our proposed projects, brown water, there's still going to be incidences of brown water. It's not going to go away. It's not, it's in our infrastructure legacy, it's in our environment, it's how we produce water, it's how we distribute water. But it's going to severely or drastically reduce the incidences of it. The proposed utility project, which will hopefully come to the council within the next month or two for your consideration, has been expanded at the staff level to deal with the worst offending steel line segments and some of the segments that have depressions or don't have the correct gradient where the sediment can collect, as Scott noted. What this proposed rate schedule does, and our commitment to the community on the infrastructure side, is to continuously reinvest. And that's what we're trying to do. We're overcoming a lack of reinvestment in the community over decades. Like I said, our environment's different. It's difficult to maintain the infrastructure to the highest level, but we are committed to it. As we move forward with the current utilities project, it's going to take a large chunk out of our problems. It's still going to be there, but it's going to reduce, and also our commitment to comprehensive flushing once a year, and then itemized or specialized locational flushing will also address the groundwater incidences. There's a lot of lines out there that are relatively new and in good shape, so we may have to deal with them in 15, 25, 50 years. But we're dealing with the worst case offenses right now, and that's what the focus is.
So is it fair to say then it's not about replacing all of the water lines to solve the problem?
No. The ones that we have targeted at this point are the steel lines. They're the ones that have the history of presenting the worst incidences of brown water within the system.
And are we only replacing the worst offenders of the steel lines, or are we replacing all steel lines?
Scott, correct. Where majority of the steel lines are being replaced.
Majority.
That we know of, we're trying to hit all those left in our system.
So,
according to our maps.
So the wording is the majority of the ones that we're aware of. Okay.
The steel water lines, and I'd just like to throw out there too, with the steel water line replacement, it's going to eliminate a lot of water leaks, which then cause a difference in velocity change. So it should be a little tighter system to decrease that.
So those of you that have weak pipes at home, be ready for a burp.
What will the new material be?
PVC C900. It's a thick wall plastic pipe. It's industry standard.
I just wanted to kind of throw something out there that even though we're replacing these, and as Scott said, of the maps that the city has, it's been my experience just from when I started at the city 30 years ago, and you talk to some of the old timers, sometimes they would be surprised in some areas where there were pipes that didn't show up on the maps. And this is an old system overall, and there's probably, even if we fix the devil you know, but there's probably a lot of devil out there we may not know in some pockets out there. Is that safe?
That is absolutely correct.
And so I guess that's the thing, the disclaimer I put out is that I grew up on East San Francisco, so and I'll tell you that I know about the metal pipes, and I've sat there during the flushing and looked at some of those carbuncles that came out, and I was actually surprised. I always assumed it was my rusty pipes or the city's rusty pipes until the water guys told me, no, this stuff occurs naturally and it sticks. You know, I guess the equivalent would be like hardening of the arteries, but they're hardening in our system sometimes, and they break loose sometimes, and then those end up sometimes in you see them basically when you flush your toilet, you go, what is that stuff that lets loose? And it looks, I thought it was rust, but it's, I guess, the manganese and some of this other stuff that gets there, so.
Any quick questions? Okay. So are we actually, as we're doing these pipes, we're creating a new map, a new water system, so you can download it on a computer, have somebody show up to a job, punch a button, and have a floor map, and know where they're at and what they're doing. And then we can find these, whatever, serious pipes.
Update.
Yeah.
Just another note, when we do the steel lines, we replace the water service lines to the meter as well. So that's all going to be poly pipe from the new sewer or new water mains. Will be poly pipe. It'll get rid of the copper and any of the old black iron pipes that can cause this corrosion as well.
Anybody else from the public have a comment? Yes, please.
Hello, is it gonna pick me up from there?
Are you able to hear him?
Yes, okay, yeah.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
My name is Robert, and I'm here representing the Little Lake Range. And I'm gonna bring this back to our next meeting, and I just wanna say that I'm gonna tell them that I fully support this. And I think that as long as we get the initiatives done that, you know, we're planning on doing, I think that you will have full support from the Little Lake Range. And we use a lot of water, and we also have a mobile home park that we have different meters for, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Matches.
Just really briefly, that whenever some truck runs over or, a hydrant, there will be a spurt of issues because of that volume that suddenly unleashes. So that isn't going to go away no matter how many pipes we replace, but it is only an occasional thing when the
Yeah, I
hydrant
believe
gets hit.
I think I brought that to council a couple of years ago where we had incidences, obviously, the groundwater. And I went back and got the reports for each month, and there were 4 hydrants hit that year. And that was the only months we had groundwater.
All right, anyone else out there before I close the public hearing? Yes, sir.
So you'd mentioned trucks, hitting fire hydrants. A concern of something, this is a related issue, since you're going to be on East San Francisco replacing water and sewer line. There is a section almost at Center and East San Francisco. And on East San Francisco, there's a high volume of very heavy trucks going to spare time, and there's also, it's like a, what would you call it, a staging area for a lot of industry in that region. And so and you get this kind of, when things fracture, you keep getting this kind of like hydraulic pumping as the trucks are going over, and that street that spot keeps having to be dug up and patched and dug up and patched. And so it ties into, does there need to be a weight restriction, or is there something that can be done to that street, on the streets that have heavier weight vehicles than, I mean, none of this town was designed for vehicles of the weight that is going over it now. So anyway, that's a thought too, that you're going to put in all this beautiful new pipe, and granted it's more flexible and the joints are not as vulnerable, but you still have this heavy equipment traveling over these surfaces. It's another concern.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I have a rebuttal of that? See, this is a logging town, so there's been a lot of logging trucks going up down the roads everywhere. So what you're initially talking about is a road base. You have to have a firm, heavy road base to handle that kind of weight. So my worry would be, is there a proper road base being put down after the pipes to keep that fluctuation away? Does that make sense?
These are important questions, but we are getting off topic.
Oh, no, I understand.
So,
A little bit.
all right.
He's new here, Jerry knows, he grew up here.
Amanda.
Would the solar projects get the diesel generators out of the neighborhoods at the pump stations?
I don't know the answer to that.
They're standalone. That's our backup PSPS for the pump station that they go down.
I just didn't know if it would make it more resilient than PSPS and if they're solar.
No, not at this point.
All right. Anybody else with a public comment about the proposed water and sewer rate increases? No. Okay.
I think solar is great.
I am going to close the public hearing, bring it back up to the dais. Last comment, okay?
Yes, this is where I was concerned about when they were pumping the hydrant across the street from me. That when I asked about it, I said, why do you have a water tanker down here recovering that water to go put it back? They were just letting it go in the drain and gone. And that was my answer. Wilson's got enough water. So that would be a concern of mine, that when we do this flushing, to recover the water and take it back to the reservoir and dump it back in and run it back through the pipes. That's taxpayer money you're throwing away.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, now.
All right, I am officially closing the public hearing and returning the discussion to the dais. Do any council members have any clarifying questions or additional comments you'd like to make? Jerry.
I won't get too long-winded. None of us want to pay more for anything. I think I look back at my dad commenting growing up every time one of these rate increases happened, but I'll tell you that, as Larry put it earlier, we could kick the can and say we ain't going to raise rates and then come back. I mean, and I got to tell you, I look back, and for some of the councils that said we ain't going to raise them, I think it's because they were scared. They were scared of you guys, and we should be scared of you guys. But the thing is, instead of coming in and saying this is what we're going to do for your money, we just don't want, for lack of a better word, we don't want to tick you off, so we didn't want to raise rates. But then all of a sudden someone has to come in after the fact and then do the big rate increase that Eric was talking about. And then I guess I'd rather take it in small chunks than all of a sudden 10 years from now have it come in and be really scary. And at least you kind of get used to it. Not that we enjoy getting used to paying more, but it's just that. And I guess I just wanted to throw that out there, that nobody wants to pay more. I'm paying more. And I'll be honest with you, it's me and my wife right now in our house, and she has a garden, and we have a dog and a cat, and I always find that for whatever reason, as much as I try to conserve, I end up in that brushing tier 2 sometimes because of, I think it's because of that garden, or I take a lot of showers, I guess. When I had a teenage daughter at home, it was a lot worse, but so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Any other council members?
I just want to once more remind you that these are the maximum rates, and if inflation really drops down and if we're lucky and get a bigger grant for the solar project or any of those factors that save us money, then we do not have to, do the maximum. So 3 years down the road, we'll look at it again, and if we can save you money, we will. Because it's us too. As Jerry pointed out.
So I always appreciate when we're spending money that we always have a check and balance system. So with this motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution directing staff to proceed with the adjustments to the water and wastewater service changes pursuant to Proposition 218 with a contingency that we will, after year 2 and every year going forward, we'll have a presentation at council where we can assess whether or not we're spending the money at the rate that we thought we would, so that we know we're not raising rates more than we need to, and that we're providing the services that we said, that we're on par with our estimations.
I like that.
I'll second that motion.
So before we vote on this motion, we probably should have a formal tabulation and announcement of the protests.
Oh, yes, okay. So per Prop 18, if 50% plus one
Correct.
of the account holders filed a protest, then we are not able to go forward with the proposed rate increase. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And so if hypothetically, if there were 2,000 accounts, 1,000 plus one written protest means that the protest was successful and the proposed rate increase would be invalidated. If there's less than that, then it was not a successful protest. But the council can still decide. The council can still vote on it and not necessarily adopt it or not. It's up to the council then.
Okay. So do we have a tally of formal protests that were received by the city?
I received 2 letters protesting the rate increase. Do I name the names or do I just announce?
You don't need to.
Just have 2.
Okay.
That's all I received.
All right. These 2 people have been heard, as well as all of you here tonight. We have a motion on the table. We have a second. Before I call for the roll, would any other council members like to comment?
Just that I thank all of you for coming and participating.
This is among the hardest and most important decisions that council makes, increasing rates. Not only do you feel it, we all live here in the community, we all risk paying more as well, so it's not something that we undertake lightly. Okay, Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Can I hear who gave the second? Because I'm sorry, I didn't. Thank you. Madge did. Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
McCubey?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Yes, and just emphasize what Councilwoman Rodriguez said. Thank you, everyone, for your input. We really do appreciate hearing from you. We can't make these decisions in a vacuum, so.
I know that some of you talked about brown water, but if you do get it, Scott, because this is being broadcast, what do you want people to?
Please call City Hall's direct line and make a report, because we submit those monthly to the State Water Resource Control Board in our monthly report.
And for anyone out there listening, please don't just post it on Facebook. Actually call the city and tell them you're having brown water. They keep track of those things, and they can actually let you know when we're having increases or decreases in the amount of brown water incidences, but they can only do that if you call them directly.
And it helps them chart where there's issues. If there's an issue in that area, that it's kind of like if it hurts when you do this, then you know eventually there's a reason it hurts. So it's kind of the same thing with our water system.
And Madam Mayor, it also, if we can determine that it was a correct or legitimate brown water incident, we will credit the accounts.
Great, yeah.
Since when? Yay.
Yeah, for since a while. Thank you, Eric, for all of your work on this. We appreciate both of your presentations. Okay. All right, we will return now to item 8, which is our city manager reports and recommendations. Take it away, Brian.
Okay. I didn't know if the room was going to clear out or not. So the first item on the agenda that I want to present to the City Council is a request for the mayor and the council to confirm up to 2 appointments of council members to a advisory ad hoc committee to serve basically to hear and to have a communication with Willits Frontier Days about the latest set of events stemming from the tree that came down at the facility that damaged structures. There has been a lot of discourse, both at the staff level and has come out publicly. We determined that this is a good approach to have the council hear the concerns, legitimate concerns expressed by the Willits Frontier Days, and also the council members can convey to the Frontier Days board some of the recent interpretations or the interpretations that we have applied courtesy of our city attorney, Mr. Lance, on the agreement the standing agreement that is in place that allocates the usage of the facility to Willits Frontier Days, and also how we are proceeding with the repairs to the facilities that were damaged during the winter storm event back at the end of December.
Okay, so we need 2 members from council.
1 or 2.
1 or 2.
1 or 2. We would appreciate 2.
And will Willits Frontier Days Board also have 1 or 2 members?
That's my understanding.
Correct.
Okay. Are any of you desirous of serving on such an ad hoc committee? Does anybody want to be on it?
I'll serve.
Larry would like to serve. Jerry would like to serve. Would anybody else like to serve?
Somebody else wants to do it.
I appreciate your willingness to serve. Anytime you serve on a committee that has controversy, sometimes you put an extra target on your back. And so I do appreciate your willingness to serve.
Okay. I'm happy to appoint Vice Mayor, Mr. Gonzalez, as our representative. It does need council confirmation. Do we do a formal vote, or do I just take a...
Yes.
Yes, so it needs council confirmation. It can be a consensus, or it could be a vote of the council.
A motion with a vote.
Okay, a motion with a vote is...
Or you can do a consensus if everyone's in agreement.
Okay. Does anybody object to Jerry serving? No? Okay, so I believe we have consensus.
I think you do.
Okay. As an alternate, Mr. Stransky, you said that you were willing to serve?
Yes.
Do we have a consensus on council that people would like Larry to serve as an alternate?
So would he be an alternate or a second member?
You said we only needed 1?
It was the mayor's recommendation that he be an alternate. Her recommendations are subject to confirmation of the group. So she's asking if the group of you are in support of her recommendation.
So,
I guess it depends on whether the group that is going to be that ad hoc committee, if there's going to be 2 members from Frontier Days, then it would make sense for us to have 2 members appointed rather than an alternate.
You know, I've had some back and forth communication with Mr. Neary, and the way that this was presented is that it would be a less than a quorum, less than a majority committee, meaning 1 or 2. I don't know how many members are going to be on their committee.
Well, maybe we should ask Councilmember Stransky how passionately he feels about serving. Are you stepping up because there's a need, or do you have a strong desire to serve?
There's a need, obviously.
yeah.
Yeah. Because if he wants to serve, he's willing to serve, then I would support too.
I think it's in the best interest of the council to have 2 members, 2 individuals can hear greater, you can voice their concerns, and report back to the council on what the recommendations are, how to proceed. So I would recommend that we have 2 council members.
And by the way that we would propose doing this, recommend doing this, is that Brian participate and that I would participate, and I would think that it would be appropriate to have Davey also participate. with the committee.
So we'll have legal representation
Yes.
and they'll have legal representation?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
In this ad hoc?
So then I would like to appoint Larry not as an alternate, but as our second member of the ad hoc committee. Is there consensus among council?
I agree.
Okay.
I thought that the mayor had the authority to appoint ad hoc committee without having approval, but this is a technicality.
I believe I've stated it correctly. If you'd like, I'll go and look at our rules of procedures, but I believe that the mayor's authority is to make recommendations for appointments, and that it's subject to the concurrence or confirmation by the group.
Okay.
So we have two representatives now to represent the city council on the Willits Frontier Days ad hoc committee, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Stransky. Thank you both for your willingness to serve. Have fun.
Thank you. At this time, we do not know the meeting schedule. We're working on that once we got the appointments established.
Thank you both. All right, Brian, next item, resolution to accept a proposal from EBA Engineering to create a groundwater flow model for Little Lake Valley groundwater basin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an item that is a legacy or extension from a presentation that was heard back in June on the groundwater status of the annual report of usage and operations of the groundwater facility for the city. When the council accepted the annual report, there was a recommendation attached to it to create a flow model. And we took that instruction provided by the council, reached out to EBA Engineering. They're the individuals that the city had originally retained to help us through the groundwater process. And they submitted the proposal, and that is what is before you currently. One item for correction, the recommendation has a contract expenditure of $89,000. The firm is willing to reduce that to $80,000 because that was a number that was originally kind of kicked around when the individual Brian Wallace, the representative from EBA, was present at that June meeting. So this effort would produce a pretty comprehensive model of the geologic parameters of the Little Lake, the Valley Aquifer. We have some good information that is somewhat dated. This is a new attempt using new imaging and sensing, remote sensing data that we could bring to bear onto the aquifer. It also will allow us to determine whatever impacts our pumping activities have on the aquifer, and then subsequently on other property owners who rely on that aquifer there for their water source.
Right, this wouldn't deal with water quality, it would just
No,
deal
this
with...
is not a water quality.
It would be more like I'm overdrawing Greta's well or something like that.
This would, one of the big questions that was presented regarding the impacts on the aquifer is the interconnectivity. Is it one large basin? Is it several large basins? What is the connectivity of those basins? What is the porous rate of the water flowing through the strata? This is what's going to indicate, help us indicate that. It's not a water quality. There are some elements of water quality, but it's not. This is not a focus on that. That would be something, that would be a totally different effort, modeling effort.
So, yeah, on that point, some of the constituents that I've talked to who also were very interested a year and a half ago when we approved the groundwater system, and then in June, they've been raising the question about the potential intrusion of arsenic into our Elias well system. And we know that there is arsenic in the Long 20 well. I don't know about the Bembo well, which is also very close to the Elias well. But Rich Estabrook, who is an engineer who understands a lot about hydrology, his main experience is oil wells, but he knows how wells work. And he has reviewed our system and with very little data, but has looked at some of the possible vulnerability. And what he wrote we received a copy of this, I think just this morning, it was kind of late, but a report that he did in April of this year. And he said that there's strong evidence that long-term production from the Elias well could cause arsenic known to exist around the Long 20 well to migrate northward towards and eventually to the Elias well. Using the analysis that he was able to do with just existing data, he estimated that it would take 14 years for arsenic to be found in the Elias well. And so I guess my comment is, to me, the main value of doing further study of our aquifer as it affects our use of the groundwater would be to understand that risk. And what the current proposal for $80,000 says, it doesn't address that. It doesn't even mention arsenic at all. And it says future additional work using the model could include characterizing the fate and transport of water quality constituents. So I guess what I'm saying is, for $80,000, I would hope that we would at least get some preliminary estimates of our risk. You know, as we continue to use the Elias well on a routine basis, how much risk are we running? How many years do we have before we might find that the horses all left the barn because we didn't look at that? So I think that's, you know, I think it's great to understand the aquifer better, but the point of all that is our use of the groundwater really reliable and safe?
Okay, so the flow model, the core element of it is the connectivity. So it's going to document and track if there is movement from the various wells that we have the information for. So from piecing that together, that is going to help us indicate if there is risk of cross-contamination. But that's just part of it. I mean, it's not purely, we're not solely looking at arsenic hits or arsenic contamination levels. We're looking at how that aquifer reacts to stimulus related to pumping, climate, and other users. Because we're not the only ones accessing that.
Yeah, I would add that a year and a half ago when we were addressing the decision to move forward with the groundwater treatment plant, one of the biggest concerns that we heard from non-city residents, from valley residents, was if the city started using groundwater, it was going to draw down their wells. So this study is particularly, this flow model is particularly looking at that, how city usage is impacting the greater aquifer. So I think while the arsenic question continues to remain important, and I'm glad that the city is testing quarterly the groundwater, I think that this specific plan is not addressing that as much as it is addressing the perimeter, the parameters of the actual aquifer and getting that information. And I think Sabrina and then Larry had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to reflect back on to when he was doing his presentation, this same question was posed, and he had stated that in order to do that, it would have to involve a whole different set of criteria in order to come to that conclusion, and that would change the scope of the project and obviously the price. And so I recall at that time that we didn't want to go down that direction yet and be thinking about spending money specifically for solving that problem. That was my recollection of that conversation. Not that it isn't important, but we just weren't ready to allocate funds for a whole different separate project, because he said he really you can't combine that into what he's doing. It would have to be a separate project.
I just guess I would like to know, in order to do that next step, how much more money are we, we didn't get a cost estimate for that, but that is certainly a concern I have, that we are kicking the can down the road as to this risk that we may be running from future year when we might find it's too late. You know, once the arsenic has migrated, I don't think we can send it back again. So that is, I just had that concern.
Larry? I think that's a fair concern, and then also I thought it's important to bring up the issue that when we were having those discussions, the amount of water that was being used at the park was pretty significant, and that water usage has gone down. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a significant drop. So using that same theory, we're also in essence kind of calming that problem down as well. But I do believe that we need to, over time, come up with a plan on how we might potentially measure that amount that could be in our water source.
Larry?
I think that it makes a lot of difference on the amount of water that we get in a year versus dry years and wet years. We had a pretty good spring this year, and it would be different if we were in 4 years of drought. That would definitely have a lot of difference. And the main reason that I voted for the groundwater was to keep the city in water, because we have a lot of places in Mendocino County which they have asked for water because they were out of water. And nobody has done, drilled a well to make it better for them other than us, to my knowledge. And so consequently, it varies an awful lot, but I think it's worthwhile to know what's down there. And I understand that it's just rivers. It's not a whole big, large basin. Like when you pump, there's wells in the valley that pump really good, and they're not next to each other. They're a long ways from each other. One's way out at the north end, and then when the Grafs used to have the water, the cement plant, they had a really good well, which they still have. The Schusters have that. And there's good places in town that have different groups of water. And it's, and they pump a lot of water. But I think that it's a good idea to know what's going on personally.
Jerry?
I agree with Larry. While what Madge brings up is important, I think that kind of having a roadmap is important first. And then as we move along, I think we'll have a better idea of what's down there. And I'm not opposed to in the future looking at another study. But I agree with Larry, nobody else in the county. In fact, I kind of feel like we're also doing the county's homework for them, and I'm still a little, have some trepidation that the county is reluctant to take lead. But since things have calmed down in the agricultural field out in the county, I think they've kind of lost interest in their constituents. But I think that since we're pumping, I guess we have a more obligation to kind of continue with this so that we have a better idea. But I think that it's a good idea to continue with this.
The fellow that was here said that the state has some kind of an idea on how many wells. The county doesn't, but the state somehow, if they can find that literature, knows. But I was really surprised, and I brought it up 2 or 3 different times to the supervisor, and he got kind of upset with me last time when I told him that same thing. The county has not a clue how many wells, how deep they are, or anything else. And, they should have. Every time somebody did that, they should have a record of it, but they don't have anything. So I think it's time that we start doing some of these kind of things and come up with it, personally.
Brian, shall we open this up to the public to make any comments before we consider adopting the resolution?
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody out in the public have comments they'd like to make about this proposed adoption of a resolution to study the groundwater flow?
Your aquifer, yes. It's very vital, like Mr. Svensky was just saying, to not overestimate your water quantity. That's because the time out here. Oh, just my kids.
You're the king of the walk and talk.
Right. So that's how it is. You can't overshoot what you got. because you end up with a bag half empty and not enough to go around. So it's very important that you have the model to understand what you're going to get. On a good year of rainfall, you'll have more than you need. On a couple bad years, you'll have not enough. And that has a lot to do with how fast you can grow a town and all that. It goes a lot into the structure of what's going on here. So it's very vital that we get a good plan done, and we understand that we don't want to poison ourselves in the other hand too. We want to make sure that's done right. I think it should be all-inclusive to come up with what's happy for the community. You're going to be okay, so we're going to get this much water, and we're not going to kill ourselves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're here. Anybody else have a comment that they'd like to make on this proposed flow model? Okay, we'll bring it back up and entertain a motion.
I have one other comment, and I'm afraid this is over my head, so I don't even really understand the comment. But Rich Estabrook sent me, he's on a vacation right now, so he couldn't be here. But he said he hoped that the model would calibrate both the Long 20 and the Elias well test wells. And the model should be able to replicate the head measurements taken from all the wells used for monitoring before, during, and after each test, and that would require a shorter time step, which was perhaps 1 minute. And I know that in the proposal it says monthly time step. So I'm just wondering if, I wish I understood this better, what his comment means in terms of the quality or the ability to use that data in a way that will show us what's happening when we do a test. You know, if we pump the heck out of water and then we test those other wells nearby, do we need to do that in a certain time frame? And he understands this proposal way better than I do, but I wanted to pass that information on, maybe to our...
Well, unfortunately, that communication only went to the council. It only got forwarded to me late this afternoon or midday, so we didn't have a chance to dissect it and be prepared to answer any questions on it.
I guess I would like to pass that along to the consultant that we're using to make sure that if they can incorporate this, which sounds like it would be useful, and again, I'm really over my head.
I was kind of hesitant to say that I would be comfortable giving direction that Mr. is it Estabrook?
Estabrook, yeah.
I received his correspondence too, but I don't know anything about him. I don't know his credentials, and I'm not comfortable like telling the EBA engineering that they need to confer, consult with him. I feel like if he really wanted to have a say, he should have submitted it in a timely manner, and maybe even to the management team. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to tie that email to this, to dictate it and tie it to the document. I hear what you're saying. I just don't think that I'm comfortable tying his comments to the actual contract. Yes. Yeah. Jerry.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the accompanying resolution accepting the proposal by EBA consultants and authorize the city manager to sign the subsequent agreement and authorize the finance director to increase appropriations to cover agreement, including a 10% contingency.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Could I just clarify that the amount we're allocating is the 80,000 plus the...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the same value associated with the contingency.
Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
I have mixed feelings. I think I'm just going to vote no because I feel like I wish I knew more about it and had more time to consult with people that are more expert in this field than I have.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Also, I would like to have us consider on the next agenda to have a discussion about moving forward with some kind of plan to monitor arsenic and potential movement so that we can address that important question as well.
Madam Mayor, I heard you and will accommodate you. I'm not quite sure we can turn around for the August 9th.
Okay.
Within August meeting.
Great.
Because we...
Is that
Because our city engineer is out of the office. We need to get back with Brian Wallace, the associate with EBA, and then look at the comments that we received this afternoon, or at least the council received it.
So I'll modify my comment that within the next soonest practicable.
Yes.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
The annual report that we got in June, so it was a little over a year.
Yep.
I know we're supposed to be testing quarterly. I didn't find that very accessible to find out what the quarterly tests showed. A lot of it is that it's very technical language. So when we do this, I'd love to make sure that we have it translated into real simple to understand, like this water.
We'll do what we can to edit it as common speak.
Okay, and so like what those quarterly reports, what do they show regarding?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any additional verbal reports?
Yes, so I was out of the office for a little bit and was playing catch up with items that were coming through, and Kathy Moorhead did an exceptional job in my absence trying to follow through, but there's a few outstanding items that the council wanted to follow up on, and I just want to take the opportunity to get it out there. One thing that has been expressed by council members both publicly and privately is the status of the railroad cars that have been placed or parked or stored along Railroad Avenue. There has been efforts, and Mr. Lance here has been leading it. We have consensus from the railroad operators, California Western, that they recognize that it's not in their best interest as well to keep the train cars there. They have talked to their operations people, and they're looking at plans or options to relocate or remove what they can. We had a discussion at staff meeting yesterday that we're going to get back to the railroad and say that we need a set schedule of what we can expect, because we still have the ability to pursue either a federal action or a legal action through the district court, so through abatement and nuisance process. So action is afoot on that one. It's going to take some time, but we heard what the council and the public has said about that condition, and we're doing the best we can. So that's one item. Status of weed abatement. Davey Bowles is in the audience here, but I checked with code enforcement. Approximately 17 letters went out during the height of the growing season for weeds and long grass in the community. We have successfully closed 13, so there's 4 that are outstanding. I don't know, Davey or Dusty, have you had any updates later in the meeting or now on that topic?
Yeah, those 4 are still outstanding. They're lower priority. Most of those are city initiated, so the majority of the complaints that are community initiated, those are closed. There's been a couple outstanding that the city's been wanting. More of a berry bush kind of. They said that most of the community is not concerned about the overgrowth of berry bushes and stuff like that. It's green, tall grass is what really gets people concerned for correct reasons. So those are kind of the outliers of what we have right now, and some sightline vegetation issues on sightline for like corners. There's one on South Main and Holly. It's been an issue that we're trying to get addressed. But we're making progress.
So once again, if members of the public have concerns about a tall grass, weed, especially now we're transitioning to fire season, please contact community development, specifically code enforcement, and we will address it. This is another item, and I'm glad Susan's still in the audience here as well. We have arranged a public forum for the benefit of the retail community and business owners in the community related to shoplifting, what the police department can do, what can't be done, what actions the store owners, shop owners, employees can do to protect themselves, and what they can expect from the community, or excuse me, from the police department if they're a victim of an incident. There's some misconceptions of what the police can do, what to follow up, and how we treat or report these items. So we want to have a discussion, and maybe a start of a further discussion or a dialogue we can have with business owners regarding how the city can provide assistance to these individuals, not only on law enforcement, but other items as well. So hopefully it's a start of something there. So that would be August 2nd at 2 p.m. at the community, well, we said City Hall. If we get a large crowd, hopefully we'll be next door in the community center. If it's less of a turnout, we'll have a more intimate setting here in the chambers. So if you have any questions on what to, if you're a business owner, member, and it's open to the members of the public as well. If you have any questions on what content or what items we're going to discuss, please let me know. I can answer that. Another item that is out there is barking dogs at the middle of the night. Sounds like every neighborhood has one of those offenders.
They're thirsty.
Hopefully there's only dogs that are barking. So it's not an easy answer to provide to the council. There's no quick answer. Sergeant Wallstrom's in the audience here. If it's a slow night on patrol, they're not writing reports, an officer can respond, but we don't want to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning and knock on someone's door and say, hey, you know, that it may be a difficult situation, or it may create a confrontation that we don't need with that homeowner. Please contact dispatch or a resident if you have a situation where there's a barking dog, or you're concerned that the condition of the dog is being kept. Let us know. Animal control through the county program will respond to the next day or two. Typically the next day if a call is lodged with dispatch. If it's a recurring problem and it becomes a nuisance, then we will step up our enforcement and our activity, either through code enforcement or through the police department, to basically create a noise citation. So we have that. But then again, I just want to put it out there to dog owners. You know, we are a smaller community. Homes are on top of, adjacent to each other. Just be mindful and care for your animals. There's no need to have a dog if they don't want to be out. They're probably barking for a reason. They're uncomfortable. They're not comfortable with their environment. Care for your animals. So, 2 other items. I want to make public announcements. Let me see if I get the dates right. August 1st is going to be law enforcement. They're going to have a National Night Out event, and this is a national date that law enforcement, first responders throughout the nation hold. And this is in recognition of the services they provide, and it's also an opportunity for the public to come up and meet your first responders, your police departments, your fire district personnel. And we're going to have equipment, opportunity to talk one-on-one with the members that are representing these different department and agencies. There's going to be food, there's going to be music. It's going to be a great event. I believe it's going to be across at Snyder Park, August 1st from 5 to 8 p.m. The other item is scheduled for Sunday, August 6th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's going to be a large item dump collection day. And this is an item that we've been coordinating with solid waste here in the city. Davey Bowles has been leading the effort and trying to pull all this together. This is an item that the council has been asking to see since I think about spring. It took some time to coordinate. Jerry Ward has been gracious enough to open up his facility, and he's also coordinating with several agencies, the county, Caltrans. So if you have any details, or you property owner or residents asking for any details, please look at the website, our website or Facebook. We have a notice right here. There's some details on it, what items would be accepted and what not would be accepted, but hopefully it is successful and we can have other events scheduled either later this year or early next year as a spring cleanup.
Did you say August 6th?
On my time? My session?
Yes.
I am just about done. I am done now.
Is the date August 6th?
August 6th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and basically the items are being collected at the transfer station.
We're going to take a quick recess for a bathroom break. If anybody needs to take a break, please do. We'll be back in 5 minutes. That's why it's a gift.
Got it.
All right, thank you all for taking a break with us, and we'll return to business. Brian, are you wrapped completely with your comments?
I have satisfied my expressing comments tonight, so thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to department recommendations. These are action items. The first is a resolution to award a contract to BAS Roofing for the replacement of roofs here at City Hall and the Art Center, not to exceed $334,370, and to authorize the city manager to execute contract documents and change orders up to 10%. We will hear from our building official, Mr. Davey Bowles.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you, and thank you for the break. It's great to have a bottle of water, so I need it. This has been a long time coming, both in a kick the can down the road kind of way. Our roof's over 10 years, its useful life, and we've been limping along with it. We don't have a blue tarp on it just because Ken was nice enough to take it off for us since it's not going to rain. But this project started out as just the dome, originally the barrel portion. We wanted to get that done ahead of our solar project that we got awarded a grant for. And then after this winter and the deluge of rain we got and storms, we see a lot more leaks in our roof throughout the flat roof portion as well. So we've been previously in talks with BAS to quote this. We ended up putting it out to bid to see if we could get some more offers. We put it out to bid for 30 days, and we came back with 0 bids. We had 2 people that actually showed up to the project, who walked the job, and then we did not receive a bid. So we went back into negotiations with Bass to expand their quote to do the flat portion of our roof as well as the Art Center. And so this basically what's in front of you is a culmination of their efforts and our efforts to come to an agreement and get this project done. The nice thing about this is since we were in negotiations with Bass previously, they honored their time slot that they gave us to do the project. Whereas, if we ended up going with someone else, we wouldn't be getting this done this year. We are in dire need of this roof. If we don't get it done this year, we're going to be really band-aiding over the winter. So it is staff's recommendation that we adopt the accompanying resolution and approving this construction contract with Bass. So does anyone have any questions?
Anybody on council have questions?
Yes,
Jerry. Jerry, and then Larry.
So we get the roof done, and then what's the timeline if we approve the solar part of it?
So they're basically they're back to back. So we have a tentative start date of August 9th or August 16th for the roofing company. We want to award, and that's the item coming right after this, but we want to award the solar project tonight. In the proposal requirements, they still have to, so they gave us a rough proposal. In that they still have to submit permit level drawings of the proposed project, and so that takes time. So we want to get them started, and within 30 days approximately of the roof being done, we should be starting the solar project. And some of it will work in tandem. I spoke with them because there is some work that needs to happen with our existing solar. Basically, we have existing solar on our roof right now, and those 2 systems are going to work in tandem. So there is some work that has to be done ahead of time as far as pulling the solar off to put the new roof back on. And we're going to basically have 2 birds with 1 stone, hopefully, with getting the roof portion, the solar portion addressed when we take the roof off, so that when they come back to do the total solar project, we can tie those 2 back together. So it's...
Larry.
Does that answer your question?
I just want to get it done.
Yes, sir.
It's way overdue, and I'm getting tired of the look with the sandbags.
Agreed.
All right, open it up to the public. Has anyone any questions or comments about this item? Mr. Walker, if you could come up front, please.
Well, the history of this building goes quite a ways back. It used to be the old Peardy store. This actually used to be the butcher's area. So it's better part 80 years old. So I think it's a long time you get something done to help it. My thoughts in the beginning was, since the Justice Hall's been abandoned by the courts, that how come we don't just take it over, get rid of this, and expand and make it a decent facility? Dress it up, make it, kind of like a Pueblo, recognize the Hispanic members of our community, and start a program of inclusion to where our community feels like they want to be here. We've got to realize our community's changing and growing. From when we were a kid, it is totally different. We've got a lot of newcomers coming to town. So we've got to get that draw. You want to look for that tax base. Bring them in.
So just so you know, the Justice Center has been something that the City Council...
I didn't know. I just know it was been empty.
I'm just letting you know, we've been discussing it for many years, and there's...
Right, so the county's holding on to it.
Yeah, correct.
Get some fire and pull some teeth.
Thank you. Anybody else have comments about this item? All right, I'll bring it back up to the dais and entertain a motion.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
How many years was... I didn't see this in here. How many years of life is left on the roof at the Arts Center?
The Art Center is an interesting phenomenon because the shingles actually look like they still have some life left in them, but there are multiple leaks throughout the building. So it's it's hard to say. You could chase them down forever, but you're probably not going to fix them.
So you could patch, and then maybe in 5 years redo it?
So, like on ours, you can see the shingles, they're actually just falling off and the fiberglass is showing, and so the shingles are actually worn down to, they're nothing. Art Center doesn't have that kind of wear, but it is experiencing multiple leaks, and so when it happens like that, you can either spend money chasing it and gaining a year or two out of that, or replace the whole thing. And so it's our recommendation that we address it now, exactly because we actually have a roofer scheduled to do that as well. So it's our recommendation that you tackle that project now as well.
And then just a financial question, since we are going to be spending, what is it, 84,000 plus over the budget amount, so we'll be doing a budget amendment. What's in what we used to call our reserve? I know things are changing in terms of our accounting, but where are we at in terms of the end of the year? How much of this is it going to take away from our projected?
We have about 200,000 in contingency funds that we've set aside for various projects and such.
And this would come out of that? Okay. Okay, that was all I had.
And just to be clear, it does indicate that the budget amendment will be $30,100, and then that there would be a separate budget amendment of $54,000 necessary to cover the cost of the room, correct?
Correct. So 30,000. So mid-year, we moved 250,000 to cover the City Hall building, and so we're looking for $30,000 in contingency for this. The City Hall is basically the emergency contingency because we hadn't planned on
the Art Center.
Art Center. Yeah, we had not planned on doing that, so we had zero budget.
Can I ask a quick question? And that slate roof is going to disappear then, right?
So we're not. That's the library.
Carnegie building.
The Carnegie,
Library.
okay.
So, yeah, the next building down is the Art Center.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. Sorry.
All right, I was getting confused. All right.
Someday we'll get some slate.
Any other questions from council? Okay, entertain a motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion is to adopt a resolution awarding a contract to BAS Roofing not to exceed $334,370. Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. All right, thank you, Davey. Next item is a resolution to award a contract to Redwood Electric Service for City Hall photovoltaic system. not to exceed $148,163. Davey?
Thank you. So we'll keep on rolling with this one. So this one we're really excited about. This is a project a couple years in the making as well. We've received the funds from Cal OES for this this project. We were successful in our grant application and received the funding for this. So this time we've been postponing this project because we do not want to take the solar back off the roof when we get the roof fixed. So this has basically been just kept getting pushed back until we got the roof done. And so we're at the point where we're pretty excited about the project. So now that we're going to get a new roof, we can put the solar on and not feel like we're going to waste money. The resolution is to approve the construction contract. So sorry, I'll back up. So we received 2 bids for this project. We have the $149,000 in hand. The second bid, so this bid, Redwood Electrical Services, their project included adding on to our existing system. You know, our solar panels up there are 5 years old, almost going on 6, but they're still, it's still pumping out, you know, sufficient power at its rated amount. It has a little readout right there in our room that you can see it's still working sufficiently. So they added on to our existing system, which gets us, you know, we'll be at about 25 kilowatts when this is put in. It's running around 4,900 watts right now, our current system. The Design Build Inc. proposal, it was, you know, $40,000 over our budget. And their proposal also included actually removing all of our old system and supplanting it with new solar in that spot. And you know, the concept was we could recycle those to another location, different building. But you know, that's not only this is a higher price to do that, but we'd also have to spend another $20,000 to another building to have those installed on another system, which is more money we don't have. So ultimately, the most responsive bidder had the right price, and it's a good plan, and so that's what staff is recommending.
I do have a question. There's a 15% contingency or change order that is listed on the agenda, but I don't see anything on the staff report indicating where that would come from if it goes over the 149 grant funding.
I apologize for not putting that in there, but it would be the same contingency fund we were discussing.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Imagine.
Yeah, every other contract that we almost always have is like a 10% contingency. Why is this one 15?
So I put an extra 5% on there because at the same time we're having to remove the existing solar system when we do the roof. And I foresee that it might be a little higher cost for some unknowns when we put that all back together. And then I'm not sure if any of you have actually seen our electrical room, but it is an amazing piece of work. I do foresee some additional items. The other items that potentially could be addressed is when we go to put that back, there's an excessive amount of old electrical line and abandoned stuff and stuff that's falling apart up there, and it might be necessary to put those back together and repair those when we put the new solar up. It might just fall apart. So that's why. And the value of, sorry, man, the value of this contract is only $149,000, so 10% is only $14,900, so it might not be enough to cover those potential changes.
That all makes sense, but so the process is that we could go up to 15% in change orders based on the kinds of unforeseen things you're talking about at the staff authorization and not have to come back. Yeah.
Yes, correct, at Brian's authorization.
But each one would have to be justified.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And hopefully we don't encounter.
Great.
But
Anything else from council? Okay. Open to the public. Would anybody like to make any comments about this item to award a contract for solar on City Hall? Okay, back to the dais. I'll entertain a motion.
I will move the approval of the staff recommendation, and I'm also excited to see us moving ahead with that solarization. Thank you.
I'll second it, especially since I noticed in our PG&E bill this time that PG&E has asked for another rate increase, so I think it's the right time.
And I think it's nice that council allowed Madge to make the motion, because we all know that this is her her dream, is to have the city go fully solar. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Carnegie?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item is to adopt a resolution awarding a contract to Precision Concrete Cutting for the sidewalk remediation project. Our Services and Facilities Director, Ms. Olivia Grubb, will lead us tonight.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and council members. This idea came about a little bit before my time, but I'm familiar with how it came through. We're a member of a risk management group. I think it's known as CIRA now. It was REMIF. They've kind of combined. It's all the same. So they actually sent this service, if you want to call it, our way, suggesting that we could look into this. So Precision Concrete Cutting is a firm that first analyzes the issues that we may or may not have. It was decided, I apologize, I don't know if this went before council, the initial stage, but it was decided we could look into it. And it was a nominal fee to have this company come out and take an evaluation of not the entire city. They focused on city-owned facilities, parks, parking lots that the city owns, of course, around City Hall, the ballpark areas, Frontier Days areas, so a good portion of the city. And as we know that the sidewalk ordinance has come about, and that's been a lot of discussion on who's responsible to fix the sidewalks. Well, of course, we are for our sidewalks. So it was decided, and they came out and spent a week or so. They came back with a very detailed report of longitude and latitude of every single point, what was wrong with that. So they determined that there's 357 individual locations in the areas that we asked them to look for that their company has, through their scope, can fix. I want to make it clear they don't. In the presentation, they listed 46 locations. They just say require additional attention. It's not very specific. And 9 that is a remove and replace. They don't do that. They've identified those areas, so we have the information. They strictly do uplift sidewalk panels, so when there's a change of elevation that is beyond the allowances of ADA, the law that was passed in 1990. So anything where the sidewalk has a difference in elevation of more than 1/4 of an inch, it's very small, their company can address. So they provided that information to us, and the staff recommendation is to award a contract to Precision Concrete Cutting to address those identified locations around city facilities, schools, which are not necessarily city facilities, but we feel it's important to be compliant with the ADA Act. The contract's in an amount not to exceed $35,088 with an allowance for construction change orders up to 10% of the total contract. The fiscal impact, the cost would come from the transportation tax. Is there any questions?
Larry.
I was under the understanding that when a piece of property changed hands or whatever, that the property owner was to, and I don't know if it's the new property owner or the old one had to bring it up to par. And are we still doing that?
Do you mind speaking to this, Davey? This is a hot topic, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Stransky. So we do not do that. That is not part of our ordinance. The only thing that the city ordinance has at transfer of ownership is our sewer lateral inspection program. That concept has been brought up in staff discussions. We're looking into revamping our sidewalk ordinance, and that is something that other jurisdictions do, which does provide a slow upgrade of sidewalks. So when you sell the property, we would do an inspection and basically identify any areas where your sidewalk is out of compliance or out of date, and have the property owner fix it. That item is it's a nice time to fix it because people have equity, and they do have the money at that time where they can fix it. Whereas if we go to a property and say, hey, you just have to fix your sidewalk, they might not have the funds to do some of these sidewalks, $10,000, $20,000 for a sidewalk. We at the time when they pull a building permit, if they don't have a sidewalk, that our ordinance is very clear that we have the authority to force you to install sidewalk. And so when new projects are being built, we do. So like PG&E's prime example was they just pulled a permit, and we're going to make them install sidewalk all around the facility. But yeah, at transfer of ownership, the city does not have an ordinance to.
So that was just a farce out there, huh?
It sounds great. I'm not opposed to it, Larry.
And because I've had neighbors that have remodeled their place up to 50%, and that 50% they stopped it because otherwise they were going to have to put curb and gutter in.
That's correct. So in our ordinance, we do have it's actually $75,000 for the major alteration for remodeling is a threshold in our ordinance. And so we do enforce that.
And that's what it is, and that's the way it is 50% more than the assessed value or the price of the remodel.
Yeah, we don't have the language on the assessed value. We have, I don't believe, we have a $75,000 for the major alteration.
So anything over 75,000 rather than the appraised price. That's even lower considering how much the cost of homes gone up.
So that item will come before council in the future for the sidewalk ordinance.
Yes, if I could just tag on here. Staff internally is looking at several ordinance revisions, proposals for the council consideration. As was mentioned, sidewalks are a concerning issue for both the council and the members of the community as well as property owners. We recognize that this was a good proposal that came forward. Yes, it's kind of a sales pitch, but it gets us thinking on how we need to approach maintenance and policy statements regarding sidewalks.
So this item tonight is different from our larger discussion about the sidewalk ordinance. This specifically addresses issues in raise of uneven sidewalks.
Correct, and it puts out a policy statement that the council, you're putting your money where your mouth is. If we're going to change the policy and ordinance that's going to require property owners to make an investment on sidewalks, the city is starting to recognize where our sidewalks are deficient and making an investment.
All right, any other questions from council on this item?
Just that we did receive a presentation at the Transportation Committee level, and I was actually impressed at the price point that it came in and the detailed information, the research that went into it, so I'm happy to support it.
Anybody would like to help me with the financial statement?
If I could make a suggestion to the resolution, if we could add into it, or whenever a motion is made, we add to it the language that we're increasing appropriations to the amount necessary to cover the cost of the 35,000 OAD and the 10%.
Is that because 202 doesn't have enough in there?
Well, what I'm meaning is that the words appropriation, increasing appropriation are not in there, so there's no actual budget amendment associated with it.
Noted.
Match.
I just want to say it also sounds like a really reasonable price for a very important improvement in as somebody who took a real nosedive on a very slight little elevation change in the sidewalk about a year ago. And boy, is that a shock when you're walking along thinking it's level and all of a sudden, boom, you're flat on your face. So it's really a hazard to not address those, and it seems like a real bargain to me.
And I'll just add that those very frequently turn into lawsuits when citizens do that. And you will pay a lot more than $35,000. So anything that we can do to avoid that and keep everybody as safe as we can.
Anybody from the public have comments about this item? Proposed sidewalk improvements around city-owned facilities. Okay. I'll bring it back up to the dais and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the appropriations language recommended by finance.
We have a motion from Councilman Gonzalez, a second from Councilwoman Strong. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes, thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I just want to add that I want to thank and acknowledge the contribution that Scott and Ken and O'Shea, they're the ones who went out, made all the arrangements with the contractor, and basically attended the walkthroughs with them and got the reports. So they're the ones who are advocates for this. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we already covered our public hearing about water and wastewater rate increases. So that takes us to number 10, our department monthly reports. These are presented at the second meeting of each month, and anyone who's interested in seeing all of the amazing work that our staff accomplishes in each department is encouraged to view the reports. They're in our agenda packet posted on the city's website. We will also go through right now to hear from the department heads to see if they have additional comments they'd like to make, and we'll start with Kathy representing the airport.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I would like to add is if you haven't been to the airport recently, please drive up there and see the new hangar. Quite impressive. It was rather interesting when they poured the concrete. It looked large, but now that the walls are up, it's huge. But it's going to be a very nice addition to the airport. So if you get a chance, drive up, take a peek.
That's Mike Smith's, right?
Yes, it is.
Great. He's going to keep a jumbo jet in there?
It looks like it.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Dusty, have you anything to add to your report?
Yeah, just highlight a few things and then a few updates that have occurred since we authored the report here. So continuing to go through the twists and turns of building a straight trail here. We're still on a path to begin construction of the 1.6 mile rail trail beginning in the spring of 2024. Right now, we're actively working with the state agencies to seek the proper permits and complete the design work. I'm also happy to say that there is some mitigation work that's required, and we have identified that it's going to cost about $300,000 to $500,000 to complete. This is a cost that was not eligible to include in our ATP grant, which is the main funding source for this application. But the good news is that it's not looking like we're going to have to request use of general fund. We have a solid team there at Community Development, and we're following lead and expect to have grant funding in place to support that mitigation effort. So I'll look forward to hopefully having some good news for you soon on that front. General plan land use element update. There's some information there that you can read, but I noted that we're seeking an extension of time from the state to complete the project. So it's always, we continue to be aware that we are working through this project on an incredibly fast timeline as necessary. This is a project that's being supported by 3 different grant series. What we got a little bit creative and was able to move the final task, the adoption of the programmatic EIR, as well as the adoption of the land use element update itself, and move those deliverables to one of the grants that has a longer date. So what that essentially allows us to do is, instead of having to bring a final product to the council by the end of the year, we're now looking to bring a final product to council, a final plan to council in April, May of next year. This will allow us to have a little bit more time to give some thought, gather public input, and spent some quality time with this very important document. So we have been working with the consultants and have modified our schedule as such.
Is that advisory committee meeting scheduled now?
Yeah, it's Monday at just looking it up here.
I don't think I got a notice.
They went out, but I will. I'm glad you asked. Then it's at 12:30 on Monday at the usual location. Okay. And there's also the ability to attend virtually. That's preferred. Just a couple other things. The city has successfully executed a standard agreement with the Housing and Community Development Department, and we'll be having a kickoff meeting with our consultants next week to begin setting up the program rules and creating the housing rehab program for the city. The award was for $371,000, and this will be a revolving program, so as we loan the money out, as that money's paid back, maybe at the time of a sale of the property, that money will go back into an account and can be redistributed to the appropriate parties within the community. Again, this is consistent with the goals of the housing element. We've spent a lot of time talking about the need to support new housing development in our community, but it's also important to take care of the aging stock of our existing housing. So I'm excited to work with our team and get that program up and off the ground. The other thing to add to that is this is 3 years of allocated money, and it's based on real estate transactions, so it's not a set number. But what staff's been told is to expect another $100,000 to $110,000 next year, and the same amount the year after that. Right now, this program is set to expire 2 years from now, but we are hearing whispers that that money may continue flowing on an annual basis. We can always redirect that money to other eligible activities. Right now, we'll be playing with the $371,000 authorized by council and moving forward with that program. So expect to come back to council before the end of the year with some guidelines for the program for your approval. And well, 3 more things. We'll be bringing the closeout report for the Community Development Block Grant Business Loan Program that we created, and just wanted to let the council know that we successfully allocated $470,000 to local businesses as loans. All those loans have been forgiven, and we're closing out the program. So essentially none of that money, it came from the state. It was kind of a special COVID-related money that came through the CDBG program, and I'm glad that we had the staff resources, both within the finance department, community development department, and otherwise, to get at that money and make use of it and see it benefit our local businesses. The community development block grants, we've had some good success so far. Again, this is one of the harder programs to navigate. It can be a little bit intimidating, but we've been able to team up with some great consultants. Now that we have Manny and a strong finance department, we've increased our confidence and are looking to seek additional funds. I just got an email during the meeting letting me know that the NOFA is not going to be released till January, but just to let council know we are continuing to seek additional grants through that program, and we'll be back before you probably in January or February with some ideas for you to consider. And then I guess since the sidewalk ordinance came up, Community Development Department is taking the lead on authoring that. We've been holding meetings with key staff, including Olivia and her crew, Scott, etc., Ken, and we're going to be, the current code is silent on a variety of situations that can arise related to sidewalks, and we lack a comprehensive ordinance, so we're looking to define roles and responsibility of city and property owners. We probably have a couple more meetings on the staff level to generate some recommendations, and then my expectation is we come before council with a variety of scenarios, questions, give you the gamut of ideas or different standards that we can put in place in our ordinance, and we'll identify some examples from other jurisdictions and kind of give you that range of options, and then look for your direction, and then move forward with authoring that and bringing it back for adoption. So that's what I got. Unless you have any questions.
Anybody have questions for Dusty? Thank you very much. Comprehensive. All right, we will move on to Finance Department. Manny?
Only just one other thing to add is right now, just wanted to mention that we're still moving forward with our Springbrook implementation. We have locked up a lot of our chart accounts, and basically we're moving on to various items in terms of like being able to just do the fine tuning on it. So this has gone considerably faster than my last one that I've done. It took us 1.5 years to get to this stage. So we're really humming along with this, and we're incorporating best practices and other cost recovery methodologies in this new system that will help us out a lot in the future. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Oh, and we're starting on payroll tomorrow, so 9 a.m.
Excellent. Anybody have questions for Manny? Okay. We will move on to police.
Hello. My first time in front of you guys to talk. So for the month of June, calls for service were up from last year by 3, so 673 calls for service. We took 79 cases, made 53 custodial arrests, and issued 81 citations. Our project updates, National Night Out's August 1st. We're planning for what we hope is a good turnout. It'll be held at Snyder Park across the street from the police department. All members of the community will be invited. There's food, a bounce house, newly acquired cornhole boards donated by Juggler.
Jugular works too.
We do have a pretty good police department cornhole team, so we're open to the challenge if anybody wants to try to step up.
Manny, you're the...
I just want that bounce house, man.
Yeah. But there'll also be music, giveaways for the kids. We're pushing that on social media, and hoping other local news outlets will pick it up as well. It's a great opportunity to come out, meet the neighbors, meet the members of the law enforcement community. Should be really engaging. Like I said, I have done similar events before. I like to have a lot of fun with it, so hopefully that works out. Staffing items, one change is that our Delta College recruit is being sworn in on the 31st at 9 a.m. So that will be happening. A recruit from Santa Rosa Junior College Public Safety Academy has started the field training program. He's met many members of the community already. So if you see him out and about, it's Officer Newcomb. Please say hello. He needs all the help he can get learning to talk to people. So the more people come up to him, the better. We are getting applications for a vacant dispatcher position. We administered the post-dispatch test on the weekend of the 8th and are awaiting results. 4 people did take the test. We're actively recruiting for a vacant sergeant position as well as CSO position. And we're looking to give interviews for the CSO position and a police officer position in the coming weeks. And we've identified a good candidate for the MP school resource officer, so hopefully we get him in for the first semester. Progress on adopted goals. We continue to maintain a public safety agency capable of maintaining a safe community, utilizing up-to-date law enforcement tools and delivering emergency services to the citizens and businesses of Willits in a responsive and proactive manner. I will continue to recruit for all of our vacant positions locally and throughout the Northern California region and beyond. We do thoroughly vet all candidates until we're confident in their ability to provide quality professional service to all members of our community. Renewed emphasis and progress has been made on updating the emergency operations plan. As we hire and recruit for new officers and support staff, we will be looking at prospects that embrace our community policing philosophy and our mission statement. We're continually assessing our needs for equipment replacement and upgrade of facilities as resources permit, Video security of the evidence property room, as well as overall security of the station has commenced recently. We have identified improvement modification to our facility in hopes that the county facility staff will be amenable to implementing some of them. The focus for next month will be continue to look to expand our community outreach coming off National Night Out and see what other events we can do, and continuing recruitment for sergeant, CSO, and dispatcher candidates.
On a personal note, I just want to say I think you're doing a fantastic job, Sergeant, on Facebook. Your comments and responses to people are respectful, informational, and I think you're doing great, so keep it up.
Thank you. I have had 2 people actually take me up on the offer to come in and sit down and have conversations with me.
Good.
Both of them were super positive interactions, so door's still open. I work after 6 p.m. and we do ride along, so.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to services and facilities. Olivia.
I think the standard is, I'll just add a few things, but I don't need to read it all. One item I want to make sure that I answer any questions is the start date for the West Mendocino rehabilitation project that involves replacement of storm drain. I sent a quick memo. Do any of you have questions that you need clarified about that?
Is that the one that is delayed?
Depends on the definition of delayed versus normal construction, but it is delayed on what was anticipated when it was initially presented to you. The start date is delayed from the date it was on the agenda summary.
It's now starting on the first day of school.
Yeah.
We believe.
Is everybody ready for that?
We met with Mark Beebe from the school district. He was sat through the whole meeting and we made sure to address any of his concerns. We're waiting on submittals from the contractor Argonaut to make sure that they phase the project appropriately to not block or hinder the entrance of the school, especially during the first week of school, which is mayhem because of various reasons. We also are willing to change the hours or possibly allow the contractor to work on Saturday. There's not a lot of work in that intersection, but we don't want to unnecessarily block, because there's no way around it. You know, there's one entrance to that school. So we're all working together, and we're aware that they want as much notification ahead of time as possible.
That is really going to be something to watch. You need to get the police department there because they're going to have to control the tempers.
Yeah, so I have I have confidence that they won't be interfering with the school on the first day of school. There's work that's down the road, Exley Lane, that just, out in the boondocks relative to the other part there, that they can start on.
Okay, because I'm a little concerned too, because I know that it's not one street, it's all the surrounding streets, 5 blocks on down each road, that we're going to see the backup. And so I like the fact that they're down at Exley Lane because nobody's going down there.
Yeah, it's still projected. So the issue is lead times on items that are custom manufactured, which are the big curb, the drain inlets are custom manufactured. We think that it's 4 to 6 weeks. So we're projecting the start date on the 21st, but when they actually get ordered and all that, they know more.
Yeah, it's just that timing of that August 21st, and then the school district just added 3 additional classes and a whole other grade. So that just increased the number of kids.
Yeah, he told us the day, they have specific days, whatever they call them, the teacher days or whatever, it's a day of the week, but there'd be no students, so it's possible that they phase their project so that they work on that day or whatever. We are all well aware of the situation.
It's called in-service.
In-service days.
In-service days for the educators.
I'm just thinking that we're all going to need some armor, both the school district and the city,
Yes, and
after the first week of school.
People are welcome to call me, you know, I'm open to talk to them. They are also expected to be able to call Argonaut, which is the contractor, if there's project-related issues.
One thing I want to tell you, is this on a Monday that we start?
Yes,
The 21st?
it's a Monday.
Okay, what I want you to watch is Thursday, because they picked up trash on Thursday. And that is going to be worth watching.
Trash plus traffic.
I just wanted to make sure that Argonaut, you guys meet, I guess, get really in depth with what the school schedule is, because like Larry said, it'll be a mess. And sometimes hoping they'll call you, I think there's always an expectation that you'll be aware of their schedule, and I think that at least if you hear their concerns of what their busy times are, if the contractors can make allowances, I think it's just easier. It's always been a mess, but it's obviously a mess during that first week of school for sure, till everybody learns the routine, parents and kids included.
And that school, they told us, has the multiple pickup times. It's not like everybody comes at 8 and they pick up at 3. It's all day long. There's people coming and going.
Anything else to add to your report?
There was a couple small things. The flag on the arch got tangled up in the cables or something. The crew got up there and untangled it and removed it for now. It was observed that the pulley system was broken. So Kenan is working to get a contractor up there with the appropriate equipment to repair that, and a flag will be replaced. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I
Not yet, but you know it's coming.
I do want the flag, and I figured that somebody at some point is going to say, what happened to our flag? So
They will.
we're working on it.
Thank you for the heads up.
The crew also started the excavation and forming for the pinwheel sculpture project in the park, the Highway 20 park, yesterday, I think. So you'll see some orange fencing and cones. Inside of that is the footing that eventually will have those pinwheels. There's kind of a curing time for the concrete, but the project has been started.
I had a question for you. Did the Maintaining the City's Urban Forest workshop happen on July 19th?
It did. Unfortunately, Kenan was heavily involved in that. It was in over there, and I walked by and saw multiple different agencies, and I think private companies also joined in that work with agencies. So there was probably 20 to 25 people.
And there were staff members there in attendance as well.
I didn't know about it. I feel like there are members of the public who, was it open to the public or was it an agency only?
It was, as far as I do know.
Well, it was more or less a presentation or like a meet and greet from MSA, the Public Works Foundation that they gain members from as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't meant for the general public.
Okay.
It was about a 2-hour workshop. They had lunch together.
Okay. There still remains a high level of interest in our street and city trees from the public. And so if there were a similar kind of workshop that the public was invited to, I know that we would have people take up the offer on that. And I have heard several comments recently about the street trees on Main Street. People are really happy with the way they're developing and looking. So.
And that was also, just to throw in that, PCC, they initiated that for us, the Precision Concrete Company, initiated that, so they're part of that core group too.
Okay.
Cool. Time together.
All right. Anything else, Olivia? Okay. Any council members, any questions for Olivia?
I just want, I guess, a safeguard is, we do have the authority to shut a contractor down if there is significant issues with traffic around the school. So, worst case scenario, we can tell them to stop.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right. Last but not least, utilities.
Just a couple updates. I wanted to note on the 9,540 feet of lineal feet of sewer main line cleaned. It's typically around 2. What the 3 to 4 times more, the goal is to wastewater treatment plant and is to get through all of town. So that's the goal for this year, is to get all the sewer lines jetted. Usually we get the hot spots where we have the businesses or the buildups, and but just wanted to throw that out there. It's quite a bit more than a normal month. So that's the purpose behind that. And then also the Elias well, the upgrade pump was started today. Should be completed by tomorrow of the pump installation. The BFD may take a couple more days, or possibly up to a week to reconfigure. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
I just wanted to say thank you for fielding so many questions this evening during the water discussion. I know it's never easy and there are never any perfect answers to satisfy everyone, but you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to City Council announcements, communications, and reports. Madge, what have you got for us?
I didn't bring any of my notes, but I know that there is another Snow Creek Power meeting first Thursday, so it's like a week off. The Solid Waste Management Authority is only meeting once every 2 months, so that'll be into August before they meet again. And I think one of the EDFC meetings was canceled and I missed the other one, so the next one will be again in August. So, I just wanted to ask, we didn't have a report on the Complete Streets workshop. Is somebody going to report on that at all? It was a very interesting day.
Yes, it was. I can add if you're at.
Yeah, I just realized it.
It happened on Friday as we were putting together the packet, but it was well received. Several members of the council was in attendance. We had good representation from various other municipalities, agencies, statewide, regional, county, and then some institutions as well. Dan Burden, who has led the workshop, has led similar workshops, and I was surprised to learn that he had a presence in this community going back to the late 90s. Late 90s. Yeah. So, long story short, there was a lot of good material there, working with community development, looking at how we can integrate some of those items. We are going to be bringing at least a resolution to the council to that basically one of your standout policy statements is to recommend the implementation of complete streets philosophies or techniques in future projects. That's going to be the first step towards a complete street policy / ordinance that we can move forward with.
Brian, that would apply to city projects, but would it have any bearing on outside agencies who are working within city limits?
Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you.
We'll try.
I love that.
We'll try.
Okay.
Yes.
Caltrans has adopted complete streets policies too.
Yes, implementation is a whole other beast, though.
So it was, and I just sent out a message to Tina O'Shea this afternoon thanking her and her team for Blue Zones for putting it together. It was something in the works for several months now, and I want to reach out to Tina and see if Blue Zones can come through with any other proposals to increase or improve the livability of the community. There's other topics we can put out there and dissect and consider. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad I asked.
Thank you, Mayor. And just also to give a shout out and appreciation to our city planner, Taylor Perry. She took it upon herself to get a bunch of information together, recognizing that the city had a role in that meeting as well, and really did a good job of representing the city and making sure we did our part.
She's developing a knack for informative but whimsical PowerPoints, so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And the newspaper had a nice picture of her there, and
Very nice.
yeah.
Good. Nice shout out. Anything else, Madge?
No.
Okay. Sabrina?
This isn't my committee per se, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because Dan Jurdy in our meeting today at the MTA said that the Friends of the Library has an evergreen corner over at the Willits Library, and that there's a meeting on Monday at 1:30 where they're gonna set dates for when people in the community can come in and learn more about how to become green. Sorry. I was thinking of you.
Yeah, does that conflict with the advisory committee? I think it does.
That one's at 12:30 to 2, and this one is at 1:30. So maybe you could pop over after.
And I realize there is a Sonoma Clean Power is going to be hosting public events at the library also, where they encourage people to come in and actually do a presentation about how people can save on their electricity bills and their, take advantage of some of the programs that they offer. The library always has a packet of information and equipment loans where you can actually you can borrow equipment to go and test whether your windows are leaking and all sorts of energy efficiency stuff. And I should get the dates on that.
There's a whole corner of the library now that's committed to being green. All right.
Great.
Let's see. For MTA, just information for the public that you'll once again be able to ride the bus. If you are a student at Mendocino College, all you have to do is get your student pass. You can get on the bus anywhere you can ride within the county, and there's no cost. So it's not just riding to school, but if you have your student pass, you can take the bus and go to Fort Bragg or to go shopping for other reasons. So that's a nice incentive. And for sometimes people need to make trips to Santa Rosa, and you can use your pass and with an additional $5, and you can make your way to Santa Rosa and back. So just wanted to throw that out there. That's a partnership between Mendocino Transit Authority and the Mendocino College to help pay for that program. There is a transit center that has been in the works and continues to be a project that is being worked on between MCOG and Mendocino Transit Authority, and they've narrowed it down to 3 sites, and 3 sites are Mason Street, and then also where the old savings bank was on Perkins Street, and then behind Coles before you get to the creek, there's some space back there, and they got community feedback, and so far that seems to have gotten the highest scores, so it's looking as if that could be the site where we would see a transit center for our county.
The third one you mentioned?
Yes, the third one scored highest by public who weighed in. So that was that. And then I had shared with Mayor Connie, because she serves on MCOG, that we had some concerns on June 5th. MCOG had let us know that we might potentially be seeing $185,000 shortfall due to the fact that when the quarter-cent sales tax numbers came in, they were lower than expected. And so we were kind of bracing ourselves for okay, where are we going to come up with this? Because $185,000 is a lot. And then on June 11th, we received a letter that we were actually going to be $600,000 short, which is a huge amount of money. So our executive director met, they were all at a symposium, a Far North symposium, and so they met with 2 of the management team from MCOG to try and figure out exactly what was going on and how we were going to make it through. And since then, there's been lots of conferring with legal and other entities to figure it out. And what we ended up having to do is we hadn't spent our CARES funding. We had it allocated, but we didn't have it spent. So we were able to move our CARES funding. We got permission to move our CARES funding over. And so the day is saved for the short term, and we're coming up with a plan for what we'd initially intended to spend our CARES funding on. But it left us today, we had very heavy conversations about the predictions. Why did we come out? I mean, if we were a city and we were expecting funding from the county auditor to give us funds, and we were going to get a shortfall, very surprisingly, over $500,000. And, with it was, I hope you have the money to cover it because we're not going to make your July payment and we're not going to make your August payment, and we're in the middle of July. So that became a crisis for us. And so in our conversations today, Dan Jurdy serves on the MT board and the MCOG, and he has agreed to meet with the county auditor's office to see if we could get to the bottom of like why were we so significantly impacted? Because we looked in Humboldt County, didn't see any impact. Lake County saw a very, very insignificant impact, and for some reason Mendocino County was severely impacted. So we don't understand yet whether the projections by the county auditor's office were maybe over-optimistic and came in lower. We're trying to ensure that this doesn't happen to us again. And I know I had raised some concern and kind of honestly felt brushed off when I attended an NCOG meeting several months back about I had seen by coincidence that there was a Covelo Trail project that had gone over budget, and they were going to have the funding for it. And so the idea was that they would take the money from the reserve from places like Mendocino Transit Authority that had money that we hold. We have our reserve account at the COG. Well, we have $770,000 in reserve in that account that we were referencing. And I was kind of told, don't worry about it. You're never going to have that kind of an emergency. Well, guess what? We have that kind of an emergency. And we don't have $600,000 that we can just say, okay, here's where it'll come from. So in looking at how can we access those funds that the MCOG is holding for us, we found that there was a policy problem because MCOG currently has a policy that says that if we need to take these funds, we can't access these funds until the fall. It has to go before the MCOG in the fall. So how are we going to solve our problem in July and August when we don't have any funding coming in? And then even when we do, it's my understanding that we only would have had access to about 400,000 of that. And I'm not sure why we can only get access to 400,000. We don't know what the reasoning behind that is, and did the Covelo Trail project run over budget? Do they have the buffer funds? Did they ever even borrow it? And how can we eliminate that policy so that if we're ever in that crisis again, because this was a pretty serious dodge the bullet kind of crisis that came upon us. We would have been meeting as a full board on a weekly to bi-weekly rate basis trying to figure out how we were going to survive. It could have been potential layoffs. It could have meant that services we may have had to tell people we're going to have to temporarily suspend certain routes and not be able to provide transportation. And there are a lot of people that are depending, especially low-income people, in being able to use those services. So it's a little passionate when you think about like the person on the ground who uses these services and what it would mean to them. And so I want to make sure as a planner, as a board of director, and it's our job to plan that we make sure that we don't find ourselves in this position again. So we're trying to find some answers as to like how we got here. Were they just too optimistic? Did something major happen? We don't know.
So the sales tax revenue impact is what triggered this whole thing?
It's all about the quarter-cent sales tax, but why were we, as an agency, so significantly impacted by the quarter-cent sales tax when we saw other agencies being impacted, but not at this scale? And then also just like specific to transportation, senior centers get a portion of the same thing, but we didn't see senior centers take, I'm glad they didn't, because senior centers are on a tight budget too, but they weren't shorted at all, even though the agreement, technically, they should have been shorted. Not that we want them to be, because we don't want anybody to be shorted, but we're trying to get to the bottom of this. And there's some concern because, as we know, the county's had some budget woes, and we're really worried, like, were we to help, I'm just going to put it out there, are we helping to shore up the shortfall? Or are there numbers to back this up? And we haven't received anything on paper that makes sense that we can account for. And so Dan Jurdy has agreed to meet with our executive director and the county auditors to get to the bottom of this.
And will Nafili from MCOG be there on that as well?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, Nafili and Janet, and yeah, it's no small amount, it's a significant amount of money.
Yeah, it is.
So, that's my big report for the night.
Anything about the finance department?
Finance department, we pretty much just talked about financing procedural type stuff. Yeah, there wasn't anything major that came out of that meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Larry?
I went to a water wastewater and we're going to, it's an update on the tank and stuff that's going in there. We're going to get a new facility to put the back truck in, so we don't have to drain it. And then the other one that was the actually, we're going to have to expand the finishing pond at the wastewater plant before it goes back into the stream. And we're interested in seeing how it's going to work with taking the water and the mud out.
He's describing a dredging operation to remove the collected sediment.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. And Sherry can finish up anything I missed.
Well, I was surprised that as we're in the middle of summer, that when they dig this stuff up, it's kind of dry still. So I didn't realize that, I figured it was dry and crusty out there and we didn't have to worry about it, but apparently it's got to be dug up and then spread out and let it dry. So
Mount Bandini?
yeah. So, and I guess what we're talking about is for the back truck is having an external building.
Maintenance
shed put out there. We've been talking about this for a couple of years.
More than that, it's been a long
Yeah,
time.
I mean, I think from before I got on the council, I think it's been floated around and.
Don't say floating around.
But I'm happy that it's going to be, and I think Olivia talked about coming back to us with I think the issue was whether or not it would come back building separate than the pad, and that we would buy I call it like an erector set sort of deal, so that we can buy it on a cooperative bidding thing, and so they'll be bringing that back to the whole council at some point. And so I'm just happy that we're able to lock up our stuff and keep it safe. So, as far as that. And then I have LAFCO on the 7th of August, and on the 18th of August, I'm in Fortuna for the League of Cities Redwood meeting. So.
Thank you. I attended the Museum Advisory Board meeting on Wednesday, July 12th. Did I already mention this one last time? I feel like maybe I did now.
No.
No, okay. We reviewed the budget. They're pretty excited over there. They uncovered a new painting that they didn't know they had. They've actually gotten to the final back corner of the archives behind the museum.
Is that the large format one?
Yes, it's really cool. It's seriously 20 feet long and 10 feet tall. They didn't know they had it. It's painted by one of the 5 significant California artists during the late 1800s. And it depicts a team of oxen and a driver. And it's kind of one of the early logging paintings of our region. And they're pretty excited to get it assessed and hung in the big room upstairs. So that's a real asset that the museum has and will be displayed here in Willits at our local museum. Also, we talked about changing our bylaws. Previously, we've had a really hard time maintaining quorum because not all the districts have appointed their representatives. And so right now, we're in a good position where we have enough representatives, and we're talking about changing the bylaws so that if we get into a pickle again, we can still continue to meet quorum with a smaller number. So just kind of trying to keep the group whole for the museum so that they can continue to make good decisions from the advisory board. And that's it for me. Move on to good and welfare.
I just want to say I saw Madge was there. I went to the Denton Burden thing, but I only popped in for about 2 hours, and I was really impressed with Taylor, and that she did that background work and was engaged. I was actually surprised that the folks that showed up. I felt guilty because I had a doctor's appointment in the morning, and so I showed up, and then I think I came down and talked to Kathy because I didn't see anybody, and so they're on a walking tour. So I was killing a little time before coming back. I saw them walking, but at that point I figured, well, I'll come back after lunch, and kind of hung out for a little bit. So it was really nice to see that interaction. So.
All right.
Before, I believe Ms. Stevenson has something to contribute.
All right.
Otherwise, she was here all night for...
I was nice and I paid attention. I have the honor of sharing the news that we have one of our longest standing employees retiring August 7th, and that is Debbie Tonelli. She is our dispatch center supervisor. She was with us when Jerry was a wee police officer.
Dispatcher too.
Dispatcher. Happy for her, sad for us. She's going to take away a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of stories to share. She is having a retirement party at the Broiler on the 19th at 6 o'clock. If you're interested in going, you could come see me. Her end of, what is it, the final sign-off? I almost said end of watch, and I don't know. Her final sign-off was supposed to be the 7th, but I think she's taken some vacation time. But I will let you know what that is so you can hear when they go on the radio, and it's her last time to be heard. But if you have an opportunity, she is working days. If you could stop at the dispatch center at the PD, thank her for her service. She really cares about this community. She really cares about every employee. She is the mother to all of our officers. She really guides them, and she helps them get through some tough times. So we're very proud to have had her for so long. And like I said, we will miss her greatly, but she's earned her time to retire and enjoy what she has left. So thank you.
All right. We have no closed session tonight, so 9:50, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out for a long one.
Thank you.